Chapter 331 My head hurts. So far the upper reef farming strategy has proven to be successful, if stressful. Some monsters seem too reluctant to approach the bright flame, but others are clearly maddened by it, charging down to extinguish me, and it with extreme prejudice. After we started to see less monsters swarming our original spot, we had to pick up and move to another location, clearing out the riff-raff along the way before recommencing our farming practices. So far we've been at it for 4 days and both of my pets are enjoying the benefits of the near-constant fighting. Both of their levels have been steadily climbing and their combat skills have been getting some serious boosts. Most of the monsters they fight have been tier 2 and above, which really helps in terms of XP gain. The influx of biomass has also been most welcome. For my part, I've been grinding away at a number of skills. Non-combat related ones for the most part, since I'm making sure that Tiny and Chrysalis do most of the fighting in order to hasten their evolution to the 5th tier. The skill I'm most interested in raising right now is my core surgery skill. I need to unlock the mysteries of the advanced techniques employed by the Sophist so that I can teach them to the colony when I return, but so far they've proven to be difficult to master. Grinding away at manipulating cores in order to increase my skill level and bring me closer to increasing the rank of the skill is one thing. I can do that, no problems, and I have been. But mastering the ability to fuse 2 cores together so neatly that they slide into each other like laser-cut metal is a freaking nightmare. For starters, I need to get core surgery to the next rank before I can even unlock the skill, but I've been practicing the techniques required in order to ensure I can get my hands on the skill as quickly as possible. I've been straining my poor head as much as possible, but so far all I've gotten is a headache and some not quite as horribly scrambled as before fused cores. Once I'm done with them, I've been handing the cores over to Chrysalis and Tiny to make sure that they are as close to maxed out as we can get them. It shouldn't be much longer now and they'll be almost ready to accept the final core to tip them over the edge. I'm keeping an eye out for a rare core, but so far we haven't come across one. Special cores seem much more common down here and we've come into possession of a few of those, but rare cores are proving elusive. The issue I had with my core is that I pushed it to max size, then absorbed a special core immediately after I evolved. My hope had been that with time and patience I would have been able to absorb 2 special cores beyond the limit and gain a more powerful evolution that way. My gambit ended up being taken to an entirely new level when I obtained the rare core and tried to push the experiment even further. So not only did I absorb a special core past the normal maximum, I went ahead and absorbed a rare core as well. The end result was excruciating pain and a very high risk of damage to my core. That I only escaped such a fate could only be put down to dumb luck. By the blessings of Gandalf's ever-bristling, bushy beard and brows was I able to survive. For Chrysalis and Tiny, if I only feed them the rare core, they should go through a truly painful and uncomfortable experience, but not have to experience the risk of permanent damage. Even now I still worry that something went wrong and I just haven't been able to notice. A hidden flaw in my core, a fault line or hairline fracture that might flare up and bite me right in the profit margins when I least expect it. It's anxiety-inducing. My magic skills have been the other focus. Healing magic is getting a constant workout due to Tiny's affliction, so level gains have been steady there and I've made a point of playing with fire magic during the downtime when we hide away to rest in order to keep pushing that skill higher. I went ahead and bought the air magic affinity, just to round out my basic avatar elements. I've not had a chance to try and level earth or air magic yet, my brains are already pushed to the straining point maintaining the healing and fire mana constructs. I'm starting to think I'm going to need a lot more brains down the line. To utilize one type of magic effectively, without a gland to produce that mana for you, it really requires you to perform 2 tasks simultaneously. You have to create and maintain the construct, which takes an effort of will on its own. Then you had to operate the construct, feed it raw mana to produce the desired affinity. Then you had to take the new mana of the desired affinity and shape it into a mind-bending, intricate shape to produce the desired spell. In an ideal world, you would have 2 brains to perform these tasks. One to hold onto and operate the construct, and one to shape the spells. For the time being, I'm using my weaker sub-brains to maintain the constructs and the stronger one takes turns operating them and shaping the spells. This means I have to pitch in with my main mind every now and again, which is frankly a pain. I'd much rather all this petty grinding be done by the sub-brains so I can focus on other things. Perhaps my sub-minds will come to resent me for that, but they'll just have to deal with it. They know who's in charge. The other thing I need to consider is how far I want to push the elemental magic skills before I attempt to fuse them. The further you push them before fusion, the more potent the fused skill will be. That's a fundamental truth of the system that Bane imparted to me. Certainly it's been true with my bite skill. The result of the fusion has proven to be very strong after I pushed each bite skill to the 4th tier. Right now, I think my goal is go for the 4th tier since I have multiple minds to grind away at these skills. I should aim high. Who knows how humans and Karmado manage to train their skills to the heights that they do. With only a single brain. Crazy. Right now, the 3 of us are resting. After an extended fishing expedition, we retreated down to roughly halfway to the bottom of the coral reef where we found a nice and cozy little alcove. Chrysalis and Tiny are sleeping presently whilst I keep watch. It'll be Tiny's turn to watch when I slip into a little torpor to get some rest. Naturally I have to explicitly order him not to sleep when I do so, otherwise he slacks off. In front of me is a small pile of cores, our harvest from the last hunt. I say small, but 30 cores is quite respectable when I think about it. The abundance of cores down here is starting to change my view of normal. A haul like this in the first strata would be considered incredible wealth. With a sigh I bring my antennae forward and touch them to the next core. I need to keep pushing and force myself to adapt these stupid things to the extreme level that I can, then try to fit them together with another core from a different species. It grueling, headache-inducing work, but someone's gotta do it. Chapter 332 Grinding for Kicks. I stagger awake from torpor, my body snapping into motion faster than my brain can keep up. The result is that my legs spasm and my antennae stab into the air at the same time, giving out a general vibe of intense energy coupled with mind-shattering fear. Hugga, I'm still getting used to not being able to blink. At no time in the day is this more apparent to me than just after I wake up. The urge to clear the sleep out of my eyes, too. Eliminate the dryness, but I can't blink. There is no sleep. I can't even rub my eyes or anything. It's weird, but for some reason this is some of the last hang-ups I have as human-turned-ant. Generally speaking, I'm good with the rest of it. I don't have many problems anymore with my new form. In fact, it's pretty great. In my opinion, those who wouldn't swap from human to monster ant are fools. Seriously mentally deficient. I even get to join a family with thousands of siblings. For someone who never had any brothers or sisters in their human life, this is a big plus for me. Well, I suppose I still don't have any brothers. Okay guys, I'm up. Are we ready for some more fishing? My 2 pets give me their acknowledgement and make our slow and careful way back to the top of the coral reef to try and reel in some more monsters. Our farming is starting to slow down at this spot, we'll have to move soon. It's hard to be sure exactly where you are in this absurdly massive expanse, but I've been trying to skirt the edges of the coral reef without heading towards the center. I don't want to pull down something on the level of that giant leviathan, not until we've had more time to power up, explore and scout out the situation at the top of the food chain. Right now, the plan is to lay relatively low and keep pumping our skills, eating biomass and pushing Tiny and Chrysalis towards their next evolution. Okay Chrysalis, are you set up and good to go? Ready, Master. How about you Tiny? Ooh, niece. It was slowing down at the end of the last one, so I'm going to start fairly bright. Be prepared for the enemy to come in hot. Having forewarned my pets, I push more fire mana into the ball of light even as I maneuver it out past the last grasping tendrils of the corals and shadow seaweed. The response from the drifting schools of sea monsters is immediate. Some dart away from the heat and light, moving away from that which causes them to feel fear and discomfort, but others charge headlong to destroy it. Straight into our net. The battle is fierce and I contribute in the little ways that I can from my hiding place. Smashing out the odd fireball spell and chomping on anything that gets too close isn't a huge contribution, but when my poor pets are getting swarmed, every little bit helps. When the fighting is done, we hoover up all the biomass we can, the stomach upgrades proving their worth once more, before we retreat back to our hidey hole to count our gains. All in all, another profitable run. I managed to level up, which is a pleasant surprise. It feels nice to reach level 17, even if I'm still a long way from my next evolution, which is at level 80. Both of my pets are creeping closer to their tier 5 evolution. Level 40 is still a ways off for the 2 of them, but if we continue our routine, they're sure to get there before too long. I really did skip ahead of them a lot in levels by harvesting the XP from those Croca commanders. Then I got the experience for finishing Garalash, which was another ton of levels. Once we make it back, I take a few hours to grind through the cores we were able to find. After all of my grinding over the last 5 days, I was finally able to level core surgery enough that I could increase its rank to core crafting IV, which means that so long as I can pull it off, the core fusion skill will unlock for me. After a number of attempts, I still fail to slot 2 cores together neatly enough to satisfy the unlock condition. Through painstaking trial and error I've gotten much closer, but still aren't there yet. The 2 creatures I've chosen are the leech and fish. Taking weak variants of these 2 creatures, only tier 2, due to their more simple cores, I've been trying to shape them into compatible parts before fusing the 2 cores together. The trick is to focus on the traits you want to keep from each of the creatures and manipulate them in such a way that the fusion won't affect the integrity of that part of the core. Easier said than done since I'm yet to succeed. When I'm done with all of the cores they are absorbed by Tiny and Chrysalis, but the 2 of them inform me that they've maxed out their cores now and can't take any more. This is good news. The preparations for their evolutions are getting closer and closer to being complete. This means the last 6 cores are mine to absorb. It's going to take a heck of a long time before my own core is maxed out. Since you can double the size of your core each evolution, that little bit extra I squeezed in last time pays me forward double this evolution, which means more evolutionary energy again. So long as I can find a suitable core to use at the end of the process, I'll be good. My mind automatically shies away from thinking about the core we took from Garalosh, still stashed with the colony far above my head. Nope. Not even going to consider that until I absolutely have to. With another round of feasting behind us, our biomass has built up quite significantly. I haven't upgraded myself during this hunt spree, so I suppose I might as well go ahead and do a little spending. With 257 points to spend, there's plenty I can do. In order to maximize my gains, I think I'm going to take my stomach upgrades from +1.5 all the way to +2.5, maxing it out. This should help keep the biomass flowing even faster and allow me to get the rest of my upgrades in a shorter time. It's going to cost a whopping 205 biomass just for this one body part, but it should prove worth it in the long term. To be honest, I probably should have invested in it straight away, but I get easily distracted by other, shinier upgrades. The list of choices expands rapidly in my mind and there are many to choose from. I wouldn't have thought there would be such a list for just a stomach, but the system never fails to be creative. Faster digestion is an interesting choice. You could spend less time between meals, increasing biomass intake that way. There are a lot of options that allow for increased biomass extraction from a particular type of monster, which is intriguing. Essentially, the stomach would mutate to become more adept at refining biomass from, for example, shadow-based monsters. It seems limited in usefulness, however, unless you intended to stay and hunt in a particular strata for an extended period of time. That could be super worth it for the Ant Queens though, now that I think about it. I doubt Victoriant and Ancient are going to keep evolving to a super high tier. They might even stop taking XP at tier 5 or 6, which means they would probably stay in the second strata for a very long time. If these mutations can increase their efficiency for the prey consumed here, the colony might benefit a great deal. For my part, I take the next level of biomass penalty reduction and stomach capacity increase, doubling down on the mutations I chose at previous levels. The end result is the vast hungering stomach +2.5. Hey. Maxing out mutations always puts a smile on my dial. If only I didn't have to deal with the stupid itch. Chapter 333 Fighting in the Shadows. Having pushed my stomach to the maximum possible level quickly starts to pay dividends. After mutating, the 3 of us pick ourselves up and start to move to another spot. The usual method to traverse the coral reef is to climb our way back down to the ground and move from there. This has a few benefits. Firstly, we don't get hunted by monsters from above and there's no chance of accidentally bumping into any Leviathan-class monsters, which is nice. Safety first, as I always say. Secondly, we increase the possibility of happening across a nest or den of monsters along the ground. The crabs prove to be such a tasty and delicious meal of XP and biomass, one I have no objection to indulging in once more. We haven't stumbled across many such treats, but if we don't try then we never will. It just so happens that in the process of moving, always a careful and slow affair in this web of coral plants with their stinging barbs, I sense a signature of a nearby cluster of monsters. How delightful. A travel snack. Tiny. Chrysalis. I can sense a nest of creatures to the left over there. Can you see them, Chrysalis? Oh. Yes. I have them. You should have picked them up way before me. What's the story, Chrysalis? Have you been sleeping back there? I haven't been asleep. I was just distracted. Distracted? By what? Is there something else around here? That'd be the last thing I need, jumped by some monster leaping out of nowhere to smack me in the thorax whilst my supposedly omnipresent I was dazed and confused. It's very unlike RinoZ to be anything but perfectly diligent. She's almost obsessively careful in her scouting responsibilities. Her ability to sense mana sources at great range and clarity is such a blessing down here. I haven't checked, but I hope that the first thing she mutated to +20 was her mana sensory gland, followed closely by her shadow eye. The latter of those two has grown to be quite the handy thing here in the second strata. It gives her the ability to see through shadows, and since shadow mana is literally everywhere down here, she's able to get a good look directly at whatever is in range of the thing. No, there isn't anything else here. I was just thinking. What sort of development is this? What were you thinking about? If you don't mind sharing, that is, I hasten to add. I've been trying to build a sense of independence in my pets for a long time. I'm certainly not going to try and squash this fleeting sign of development from my most dedicated pet. It's nothing. Sure. Remember, you can always talk to me, or not. Your thoughts are your own. If you decide that you'd like to chat to me, you can do so anytime. Okay. Yes, Master. All right then. Now let's go annihilate whatever it is that's occupying this nest nearby. I think it's centipedes again, Master. Damn centipedes. Experience the heat of my RAAAAAAAGE. 30 minutes later, the hated shadow variant of the claw centipede has had their territory reduced by one nest. I'm still determined to completely erase this hated species from the entire dungeon. Perhaps it will be impossible on my own, but with the assistance of the colony, we may be able to accomplish one day. The thought of millions of ants hunting the hated centipede throughout the entire world of Pangera puts a warm fuzzy feeling in my heart. It's decided. The moment we return to the colony, I shall pass on this most sacred of missions. As we're busy munching on the biomass, RinoZ interrupts my thoughts. Master, I think I'm sensing something. More monsters. Excellent. I'm barely warmed up. I'm not sure that it's monsters, it feels different. I think they're coming this way. This sounds a little interesting. What could be going on here? I reach out with my own mana sense, but I can't get a handle on what it is that RinoZ is telling me about. They might be coming for the clearing. Let's get behind some cover. I want to try and get a look at whatever this is. What direction are they coming from? Once RinoZ points out a direction with one slender tentacle, the three of us scramble to hide on the other side. I duck and weave through the stone coral until we are reasonably behind cover. It's not easy for an ant larger than a car to hide, but I do my best. Hopefully the stealth skill to carry me a little here. Tiny isn't particularly stealthy either, so I urge him to get a little further back. RinoZ is, quite naturally, still resting on my back and quite small in her shrunken form, shouldn't be any problems there. After a few moments, I start to detect what was the she was talking about. There are 6 different mana sources I detect, but they're different to what I would normally associate with monsters. Monsters are bright with mana, filled to the brim with it as it flows through every fiber of their bodies. If the monster has a core, it glows like a light bulb to my mana sense, and energy ripples around those creatures as their core pulls in the mana around them. What I sense now isn't like that, not at all. There seems to be hardly any mana inside the bodies of these creatures, nothing at all like a monster. It's so confusing. What could possibly be down in the dungeon looking so dim to my mana sense? I'm curious. What is it? What could it be? Unconsciously, I nudge myself a little closer to the clearer to get a better view as these 6 strange entities step into view. The 6 figures step into the clearing, taking in the scattered remains of the biomass we had been consuming. They move quickly toward the center of the clearing and I take in my first impressions. It's immediately obvious why they didn't feel like monsters. It's because they aren't monsters, that is. If I'm not mistaken, then these are sapient creatures, possibly from the surface. They're humanoid, but taller and bulkier than a human. I'd put the tallest at over 8 feet tall, nearly as tall as Tiny, and wide, thick in the shoulders and hips. Unless the light is playing tricks with me, it also appears as if they are made out of, or at least covered in, stone. Gruhale Saruran. One of them speaks and its voice is as deep and rough as 2 rocks being crushed together. I'm agog, fascinated. Surface people, with language, made of stone. This might help explain why they felt so strange to my mana sense. They had a stronger reaction than humans had in the past, which made me think there was no chance they were a sapient race, but clearly they have a bit more of the special stuff in their makeup. Not as much as monsters, who are literally born from the stuff, but hey. The obvious problem that I have now is, how the heck do I get as far as possible from these giant stone people before they try and hack me apart for my delicious core? Chapter 334 Stone Skin, Fast Feet. Suddenly gripped by fear, I hunker down and try to keep myself as still as possible. Don't breathe. Don't even blink. Blink and you're dead. Wait. I don't have eyelids. Settle, Anthony. Play it cool. My mentality is frazzled after being thrown into this unexpected situation. I have just the skill for this. Without hesitating, I sink my mind deep into the soothing calm of meditation. When using this skill, emotion fades into the back of my mind, brushing against the edges of my awareness instead of rushing to the forefront and dominating my decision making. To be honest, I should probably spend almost all of my time sunk deep into the meditation skill. I can recognize that when I use the skill and my emotions don't cloud my thinking. The problem is that I don't really like the feeling of being this cold and logical. It doesn't feel like me. So I tend to avoid it, even though I recognize how much better my decision making would be. The more I use the skill, the higher level it would get as well. Who knows what depths of emotionlessness are possible as it continues to rank up. Those considerations are for another time. Right now I need to focus and get out of this situation cleanly. My thoughts clear and I watch the six figures with cold detachment, taking in details that I hadn't focused on before. The armor the stone people are wearing is minimal. Their arms and chests are mostly bare. They have arms guards strapped to their forearms, the glint of hard metal standing out against their dark gray skin. A variety of weapons are visible on their backs or hips. Large curved blades and two-handed swords on their backs, as oversized as one would expect due to their massive frames. One of looks like he's carrying a buster sword. Look at the size of that thing. A shiver runs throughout outside of my awareness as the image of that massive edge shearing through my carapace flits through my mind. Don't worry, the diamond carapace is inviolable, it will never fail you. Their eyes scan the clearing constantly as they take in the signs. Their movements feel professional and clean, they never move too far from each other, their hands stand on the hilts of their weapons and they talk constantly, muttering low whispers to each other. Presumably about what they see or sense. To combat the ever-present darkness they each hold a glowing crystal in one hand which emits a strong beam of light, like a. I need to be careful here. I know for a fact that mana detecting skills are possible for humans as well, and I've seen humans use mana detecting crystals. If they bust out something like that, my overloaded tier 5 core is going to light up like a firework. I've seen enough. Staying still any longer than this carries way too much risk. We need to sneak out of here, team. Get yourself ready to go. We move slow and silent. My two pets give me their assent and I shift my legs slow and steady, gradually pulling myself further away from the clearing. I don't know why these 6 stone people are down here, and as much as I'd like to get some information, I don't want to risk it. I have no idea how powerful these people are. Nor do I want to start any beef. Maybe I launch a gravity bomb in there and wipe them out, get a bunch of experience and walk away laughing. Then 3 days later the entire expanse is flooded with very angry stone folks wondering where their team went and hunting for my impressive sparkly hide. No way. Advanced Stealth 2 has reached level 10, upgrade available. I'll take it. Perfect timing for this particular upgrade. Without hesitation I spent the skill point to upgrade the rank of Stealth. As the knowledge trickles into my mind I begin to employ the techniques that blossom into understanding, minimizing my massive profile, using the shadows and lowering my weight with care to suppress sound. I only managed to take 10 steps before my antennae sent a shock through my non-existent spine. A tingle of warning that sends phantasmic ripples off all over my carapace. Duck. Boom. The coral around me explodes as my hyperspeed reflexes send me smashing my own head into the dirt to duck low. As a testament to my newfound reactionary prowess, I even managed to tuck my antennae in and neither of them gets chopped off. Winning. Go. Go. Get on your bike and ride. Tiny bellows out a hoot of rage mixed with 2 parts joy as he leaps to his feet and with one mighty bound sends himself flying up into the coral branches as they collapse around us. With my near 360-degree vision I can see the coral appears to have been sheared off, as if sliced with a giant knife, and the giant structures are starting to come down around our ears. Agile as a monkey, Tiny flings himself through the wreckage even as it descends through the air, but I don't have time to admire it, I need to motor. 6 legs scrabbling and spinning like a road runner, my muscles strain as I push my legs to their extreme, forcing immense amounts of power through my legs to the point I can feel them about to crack. Luckily they don't and I gain traction. We're away. Boom. Missed me. Advanced dodge has reached level 3. Excellent. Keep running. Dash. Putting all of my skills to use I move so fast my antennae are pressed back against the top of my head by wind pressure and the scenery around me fades to a blur. In my mind I can sense the 6 dim figures launching in pursuit, moving with incredible speed and precision. These people might be a higher level than I thought. This is exactly the sort of thing I didn't want to happen. How did they spot me? Detection skill. Another one of those enchanted crystal gizmos. Good. Fashion eyesight. At this point it doesn't matter, I just have to get away. Hang on, RinoZ. See if you can throw them off somehow. Okay. Darting left and right I manage to avoid to the following strikes. I can see them, if only vaguely, as they flash out around me. It's sword light, but narrower and so much faster than I've ever seen before. In just a heartbeat it lashes out, slicing through everything in range and then it's gone. This is surely a high-rank skill in use. I don't want to mess with whoever is throwing these out, the variables and potential danger are simply too high to bother with. It's not like I'm defending my home or anything, I have no stakes here. Better to just run away and live to fight another day. So, I run. Dash. Another surge of strength pulses through my legs and I zip forward, my eyes can't even follow my own movement. The coral branches and swaying seaweed rush past and I don't even care if I get stung by some horrific poison. Escape first and then cleanse poison later. Even now I can still sense the enemy behind me, flitting like shadows through the destruction that they wrought. Left. Fizz. Ting. A buzzing sound tickles my ear before a steel-tipped crossbow bolt slams into the ground next to me and I stumble slightly due to the sudden change in direction before catching myself and continuing to run. I need more distractions. How? Acid flies out in all sorts of directions, wherever I can sense them. Wherever it strikes, the acid sizzles and turns sticky, causing the pursuers to shift and adjust their trajectories to avoid it. It doesn't buy much, but every little bit helps. RinoZ. Got something yet? How? Now. After concentrating hard, RinoZ plunges her tentacles into her own shadow on my back and they emerge dozens of meters behind us, erupting from the ground to form a dark web that reaches greedily to engulf one of the hunters. Chapter 335. The hunt is on. I don't exactly who these people are, but they are very persistent. Thanks to the magnificent meditation skill, I'm very much cool, a placid lake. Not a ripple on the surface of my thoughts. Boom. Crunch. Not upset at anything, I am a calm blue ocean. I embrace serenity. Serenity now. Boom. Serenity now. Please stop trying to inflict such deep cuts on my business zone. The level of budget cuts they want to inflict simply can't be borne in this fiscal quarter. My gaster has been experiencing very lean times. That's a lie, but don't focus on that part. Focus on the part where I don't get sliced and diced. They are trying to link around and surround me, moving as a unit even though I'm sure that they aren't speaking. How could they? The collapsing corals fall with the weight of buildings as they crash down to the floor of the expanse. As we run, the air is full of the roar of stone as it crushes and crunches everything around us. Why the heck are so keen on killing me? Am I so delicious? Is my core so precious? Surely not. Is it? My carapace. It could be. Shiny and pure, coated with pure diamond. Who wouldn't want it? It's my curse for being so beautiful. Did I bring this on myself for being so attractive, so illuminating? Like a precious jewel, my luster is too bright to resist. Whatever the reason, I will escape. I will run free. Firing acid in all directions, I put my minds to work, furiously pondering ways to enable my escape. Should I cast spells? Difficult. Wielding fire magic, water magic, or gravity will be tough. If they catch up to me, gravity could prove very helpful. I could slow them down using bolts or the domain in order to preserve myself. Hitting them whilst they flit through this waterfall of destruction is near impossible. Also, I don't want to antagonize the hunters if possible. Clean escape is by far my preferred option. Therefore, the best course of action, my mind's reason, is to find a distraction and use the chaos to run. RinoZ, keep a shadow eye out for distractions. I'm a little busy here, master. Get a second brain already. To be fair, RinoZ is probably using her main brain to focus on her tentacles involved in her little surprise attack. Which appears to have gone well. Her target is currently engulfed in tentacles that surround them like a sphere of horrific blades and pulsing limbs. Hopefully no emotional scarring results from the stay within this eldritch prison. The other hunters react with obscene speed to the threat and divert themselves to their comrade the moment the threat manifests itself. Blades flash, shadows converge and light erupts behind me as I push my speed to the limit and haul my precious diamond backside away. Ah! RinoZ cries out in pain as her limbs are severed and she hauls what remains back out of her shadow gate. What's wrong? That wouldn't normally hurt so bad. I don't know. It just hurt. Damn it. These hunters are getting on my nerves now. How dare they hurt my pet? Hang on. But I'll make sure to make use of this opportunity. Bringing my brains into the escape, I perform a number of acts at once. I dash around and through a dense section of coral whilst firing a barrage of acid toward the clumped shadows and grasping for nearby monsters with my mana sense. In a moment of blind panic, I find a tiny spark and I seize it. In a second I've realized just what I managed to detect, and if I could, I'd smile. Sweet justice is coming for you little mutts, and I'm gonna enjoy it. From a safe distance, heart surging with hope and joy that allow to wash through my meditative mind, I angle my way through the coral forest toward the nest of shadow hounds. RinoZ's painful sacrifice has bought us enough time and separation that I have the space to get clear. Acid now gums up as many surfaces between the hunters and I, which buys just a tiny bit of time more as they resume the chase. It's enough. I burst into the clearing as sword light explodes around me once more, and a horrified pack of shadows hounds is already in the process of hightailing everywhere and in all directions, clearly spooked by the cacophony they'd no doubt detected landing on their laps in such a sudden manner. Luckily for me, they flight in all directions includes back toward the direction I came in, right into the faces of the hunters. Muahaha. How do you like them apples? Now, let's get clear. Tiny. Where the hell are you? Har. Up there. Above my head the big ape is swinging through the coral like a, I'm not going to say it. I'll just say he looks at home up there, comfortable even. I can feel the resentment building up. I've been down here struggling and running. Where was my loyal pet during this time? Lazily swinging and leaping above our heads. You'll get yours, Tiny. When I'm done with your core, you'll see. After you evolve, your head will turn into an actual brick. You'll be a giant lightning ape with a literal fired clay brick for a head. I'm sure it's possible. With the power of mana, anything can be achieved. A brick head, which contains within it another, more dense brick. That's you, Tiny. Laugh while you still have a soft, malleable face. Despite my smooth work, it still takes us 5 more minutes of desperate running until I'm confident that our pursuers have lost the trail. Tiny, RinoZ and I sit hunched in a small pocket of space halfway up the coral forest. All of us are breathing heavy and recuperating from our frenzied escape. A part of me is still paranoid, expecting blades of sword light to explode around me at any second. Those hunters were fierce and persistent. They were freaking dogged in their pursuit. Is hunting a monster like me really that valuable? Is it my core? Surely not. It's a good core. Don't get me wrong, especially for a creature of my tier, but for strong and skilled fighters like the Stone Temple pilots back there, it can't be the first one they've ever seen. Now that I reflect back, the whole chase feels a little off. None of those sword slashes felt completely lethal to me. Surely I shouldn't have been able to dodge that many strikes so cleanly. The more I think back, the more I feel as if those strikes weren't lethal. Were they trying to cripple me, rather than kill me? A chill runs through my core. Something feels off about this. Why are these stone hunters down here so soon after the wave? Are they normal dungeon delvers, or is their purpose something else? I have this uncomfortable feeling something is happening that I don't understand. How are you, RinoZ? I'm okay. It hurt, but I've replaced the flesh that I lost. Great. Tiny, come over here and I'll heal you. Once I top off his HP, it's time for us to rest. Let's recoup our strength. I'm not sure we've seen the last of those hunters, much as I wish I could say different. This is going to make life more difficult for us. If we have to keep our eyes open for stone people trying to slice our legs off, we won't be able to hunt as blatantly as we have up to this point. Which means slower rates of experience and biomass gain, which makes Anthony a very sad ant. No matter, we'll just have to cope with the situation. Furtive and stealthy hunting may be less efficient, but it's safer. A little safety sounds like just the thing I want right now. Chapter 336. They're coming. Turns out that our rest doesn't last for long. When an opportunity comes along in dire circumstances such as these, I'm not going to say no. After 30 minutes of catching our breath and healing up, RinoZ perks up a few seconds before I notice it also. A strong reaction from my mana sense, below us. From the glow of the core I feel as if this monster has to be tier 5, the same as me. This is a good chance to harvest some experience and gain a powerful core to play with then absorb. Should we go for it? Those hunters could still be around after all. It hasn't been long since we lost them, and if they're still snooping around the area, I don't want to get their attention back on us so soon. But, oh, this prey feels so juicy. Nice strong core, surely a ton of biomass on offer as well. Since I was only just considering how scarce good hunting opportunities are going to be if these hunters stick around, can I really afford to turn away from a tempting target such as this? Let's go and check it out at least. Surely there's no harm from that. Reasoning this way, we emerge with caution from our resting place and start to descend toward the creature, which feels as if it's leisurely picking its way through the coral undergrowth, confident in its own strength. Oh ho, we'll see how strong you are, my little fish. Something about stalking prey tickles the primitive parts of my human consciousness. It's dynamic and exciting. I climb down vertically, my claws gripping the surface tight as my antennae sweep through the air, soaking in every little particle the atmosphere has to give me. Even Tiny seems sharpen up. His ears twitch furtively as he take in the sounds of the expanse, his eyes focused with an unusual gleam. Nice, Tiny. I like to see that look on your face. Stay frosty. He gives a confused grunt. I mean, stay sharp. He frowns, his ears droop a little. Just stay focused, damn it. Ears perking back up, Tiny gives me a toothy grin as his powerful hands grip the coral, lowering himself hand over hand. For her part, Chrysalis is focused and intent as she concentrates her special sense on tracking the prey. It doesn't take long for us to find it. The creature resembles a mutated lobster. Its front end is raised up, two powerful, fearsome-looking claws on its right side, a mass of writhing leech-like limbs on the other. Those things look particularly nasty, tentacles tipped with ringed mouths as if they seek to suck out their victim's blood. Nasty. Beneath the strong-looking carapace, the many little lobster legs scuttled away as the creature moved with the lazy grace and confidence of a creature who feels unthreatened in its current environment. Compared to the usual crabs and leeches, this monster would surely have little trouble moving through this place, but not today, Mr. Lobster. I wonder if you taste as expensive as you look. No, wait, stay cool, Anthony. Don't rush things, you might end up in serious trouble that way. Still spying on the unhurried creature from above, I cast about with all of my senses, trying to find any hint of the hunters. Chrysalis, I want you to go and scout around, see if you can find any sign of suspicious movement. We don't want to run into those damn stone people again and get jumped when we attack. Okay, Master. Will you be okay with me moving away? Chrysalis fretted. Of course, don't worry so much. Reluctance was evident in every tentacle on Chrysalis' body as she rose from my back to extend her limbs to move away. Tiny, don't attack. Let's just relax here and take it easy until Chrysalis has had a look. We need to be careful right now. A look of dissatisfaction crosses the face of the big ape, but faced with a direct order, he doesn't have a choice but to follow my directions. The two of us hang like giant but more attractive spiders from above the monster. We control our breathing and move as little as possible to stay hidden whilst Chrysalis does her scouting. Beneath us, totally oblivious to the two hungry creatures watching from above, the massive lobster continues to scuttle on its way. After 5 minutes, Tiny and I have had to change our position twice and still Chrysalis hasn't back from her scouting mission. I'm starting to get a little nervous, but then her voice rings in my mind. Master, I think I found something strange. Come to me. Oh no. That's not what I wanted to hear. Moving carefully, the two of us move toward the direction I can sense Chrysalis, and we find her hanging from a coral branch by her tentacles, her body still in its shrunken form to minimize her profile. Toward the left, Master, along the ground. I stretch out my own mana awareness and I find them, faint ghosts of energy, creeping through the lower reef. Damn it. Stupid hunters. They're still here, all 6 of them, moving in a pack. Now, Master, toward the right. What? I already found them on the left. Don't tell me. Heart sinking toward my core, I turn my senses in the other direction, and after a few short moments I find them. Another 6 moving. In the same direction as the first lot, perhaps 60 meters apart. They're coming through the coral like a drag net. Trying to scoop me up like a fish. No. 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 Not like this. We need to get out of here. They're clearly hunting for us. But where can we go? What about up, Master? I haven't detected them above us. Good idea. Move slow and careful. We need to stay hidden at all costs. 12 hunters on our tail. 12. And those are just the ones we've found so far. Was the tier 5 monster so nonchalantly moving through the area they'd lost me in just bait? Is this all part of their masterful plan? Why the hell would they even want me that badly? I don't like this, Gandalf. One leg at a time we creep toward the upper reaches of the coral branches in order to escape above the hunters. If we can get high enough and then sneak over the top of the 2 hunting groups, we'll be in the clear. Once we get past, we can race toward the edge of the expanse and get the heck out of Dodge. With this strange behavior from the hunters, it's just too dangerous to stay here anymore. You win, hunters. You've managed to chase me out of here, my tail between my legs. I don't want to deal with your nonsense, so I'm out. Go and hunt each other and your mothers for all I care, just leave me out of it. The closer we get the top, the more we start to angle across to loop over the hunters' heads, far below us now. Desperate to get away from this net, I'm willing to take the risk. Of course they predicted it. They saw me and my pets climbing during the last chase, they know that we can climb high in the coral with ease. As we loop over the top of the hunters, an exultation is soaring in my heart. I feel Chrysalis stiffen on my back and then I sense them as well. A third group, right in front of my face. They haven't seen us yet, but we only have seconds before they do. What to do? Fight, run, hide. My sub-minds begin to spin at 1,000 kilometers an hour, drawing on mana and preparing spells that might help as I try to think. I barely got away from 6 of these people, how the heck will I get away from 18? Chapter 337 Spider to the Fly. Well, Nards. This isn't ideal, not even close. Enemies below, enemies in front. With these new groups popping out of nowhere, my mind is starting to conjure stone-faced hunters leaping out of the shadows in every direction, ready to drag me to the ground and peel of my carapace. It's not going to happen, I won't let it. We're in too deep now, they're all around us. We've no choice but to try and break through the middle. Chrysalis, stay on my back and help distract them. Tiny, try your best to follow and throw a little lightning to keep them off our trail. It's going to take a real effort to slip out of this one, but we can do it. Let's go. It's clear that these hunters are determined to get their rocky hands on me, even though I have no idea why. I can't afford to play nice anymore. I didn't want to get violent before in case it increased their desire to chase me, but it appears that was a waste of effort on my part. They were always going to come for me, I should have gone hard when there were only 6. To be fair though, it isn't as if I could have predicted a situation like this. More hunters appearing to try and track me down. It's inexplicable. It defies explanation. How could they possibly know what a magnificent specimen of a monster I am? They only caught a glimpse of me. Nevertheless, no more Mr. Nice Anthony. I'm getting out of this encirclement and never turning back. They won't even smell me again. Go. As I holler out that command, the 3 of us burst out with as much speed as we can, all pretense of stealth thrown away. We head toward the left, moving toward one of the groups. Sharply but away from the others just as quick. The reaction of the stone people is rapid and decisive. The group in front detects us in an instant and moves to intercept as the group below us rises through the coral branches to cut us off from below. The final group of the 3 circles around behind us and starts to climb, cutting us off from below. You aren't the only ones who have ideas. Let's see what happens when we do this. Flaring to brilliant life above my head, the globe of flame makes a glorious reappearance, flooding the area with light and blessed heat. Quick as a thought, I whip the ball of fire upward as high as I can and pump it full of fire mana churned out by my main sub-mind. Like a miniature sun, the fire roars, sending light deep into the vast ocean of shadow above, bringing warmth to a place that hasn't felt it since it was formed. And the monsters hate it. Even as my mind starts to work on my next spell, the angry cries and roars of hundreds of monsters can be heard echoing down from above. This will bring any other hunter groups right to me, but I just have to chance it right now. A massive swirl of chaos is going to be my best chance to escape, and I'm going to make the biggest I possibly can to make it happen. They're already coming, the hordes of fish and sea snakes and creatures that want to extinguish my flame and myself at the same time. As they pour down from above, I can feel the shadows hesitate before they recommit to the chase. They're determined, I'll give them that. But not as determined as me. Freedom beckons to me and I shall seek to leap into its welcoming arms, no matter the cost. My antennae forewarn me of the incoming sword light and my legs pulse with strength as I shift my not inconsiderable weight to respond to the perceived threat. Crunch. Shards of coral fly through the air as blades fly up from below and sever branches all around me. My minds frantically churn as I fall, helping to calculate the best path through this collapsing mess. I have to jump from falling branch to falling branch even as I weave together my gravity domain. If they are going to come at me, they're going to have to deal with the power of gravity. Let's see them overcome that. The purple mana from the gravitational mana gland explodes out from me and forms a dense sphere around me. It's a strain to maintain it at this time, but I'll have to push myself hard to get out of this. The hunters react with caution when they witness the gravity domain expand outwards. I can feel them hesitate in my mana sense, but only a fraction of a second. Nothing will deter them. From above comes the swarm of enemies. Shadow fish, sharks, tentacles, monstrosities of all kinds hurl themselves into my gravity domain, trying to bite me at any cost. What they find is that their own weight is massively increased and swimming freely through the air is not quite as easy as they found it moments ago. The weaker monsters even drop out of the bottom of the domain, hopefully right onto the heads of the hunters below. The hunters on my right grip their blades and unleash their strikes in a coordinated unit, almost as if they are thinking with one mind. 6 separate sword lights flash out and carve away the footing around me, forcing me to jump clear looking for more footing I can dig my claws into. I can't afford to lose speed, and every moment I'm in the air is a moment my legs aren't rocketing me forward. My antennae tingle and more blades streak through the air towards me, ripping apart the coral I was about to land on, sending me tumbling through the air. I might have fallen right down into their hands after those well-placed strikes, but fortunately my backup army of fish has arrived to muddy the waters and the hunters can't follow up, buying me and my pets precious seconds. Chrysalis, tiny, gonna need some help. I shout as I frantically try to get my feet back under me and generate some traction. Lightning crackles and tentacles fly in response to my call. The hunters are swift and nimble, but even they struggle to evade the wild arcs of electrical energy that come flying their way. Chrysalis contributes in her traditional manner, by spawning all manner of horrific tentacle nightmare zones towards the enemy and sinking her limbs into their very shadows. Nice. Good work, team. Still falling through the air, I managed to get my legs set on a tumbling block of coral long enough to leap from it toward a nearby stable coral piece. The second my feet touch down on that precious safe ground, I'm going to dash and never look back. So long, suckers. Stay here and play tag with each other forever for all I care. At that moment a powerful blow strikes my consciousness and rings it like a bell. My vision blacks out for a moment and each of my minds screams in pain, but I manage to hold on and stay awake. My thoughts are sluggish and my brain, all of my brains, ache powerfully. My momentary lapse was enough for me to miss my foothold, and my grip skill isn't enough to support my massive frame. I slide away from the coral and now I'm falling again. Shouts from Chrysalis ring in my mind, but they are dim and spike into my mind as if from a great distance. Get safe. I manage to squeeze out before another blow strikes my head and I fall away. Chapter 338, the latest candidate. It was to us that the ancient the world would come to know as Yerum the eternal worm would come. Deep below the mother mountain, the everworm rose during the time of rending, and our elders did contend with that great ancient. We were arrogant in that time. Our bones were as strong as the stone in which we made our homes, and our cities rose high to the sky and deep beneath the ground. As the eldest of the children of Pangera, we saw this world as ours to inherit and control. From our great fortress capital Marazon we projected our strength outward from the mother mountain and forged the first great surface empire. As the mana rose and the calamity befell us, the first sign of the doom to come was a faint grinding echo reported by the deepest minor triads. For weeks the sound grew louder until even wisest and most powerful of our shapers in their towers high atop the peaks couldn't sleep for the incessant noise. As if the mountain itself ground its teeth, the sound was said to drive some to despair as it grew louder day by day. Despite this warning, it was a great shock to our people the day Yerum came. Who could have possibly been prepared for such a thing? If you go to Marazon today, and should you be granted entry to the lower tunnels by the sentinels, there you would find a place guarded by the strongest of our race, watched over by the most powerful of the shapers. The Zeracanalia, the gateway to the underworld. No portal or working of spatial magic, the gateway is a 300-meter wide tunnel and stretches beneath the city to an unknown depth. Some speculate the tunnel, created by the everworm as it rose to the surface, leads directly to the center of the world. If any have been able to measure its depth, their findings have been kept hidden. Why Yerum chose to rise to us we don't know. Why the worm chose to descend the same way it came up, we don't know. The ancient empire battled the worm for many years before the lowering mana levels forced it to retreat below. In that time, only one of the Earth kin was known to have exchanged words with the ancient, Ignean Pharaoh. The greatest of the shapers in the ancient empire, she sought to commune with Monster for reasons she kept to herself. Whatever she learned, she did not share and retreated from the public eye. When the war was finally over and the campaign to reclaim the homeland of the kin began, she vanished entirely. To where, to do what, is still not known. Excerpt from The Fall of the Ancient Empire, by Shaper Scholar RinoZ of the Iron Circle. Granon Lazus leaned heavily on his staff as did his triad mates beside him. The difficulty of such a mental working was high and the strain was considerable against normal foes. That the triad had been pushed to such an extent against a single foe was testament to the strength of the individual monster they had tackled. Granin himself was shaken from his brief encounter with that alien mind. Images of swarming ant monsters crawling through tunnels, walking over the top of each other, their antennae always moving. Chambers filled with heaving larvae, glistening eggs, and an endless number of monster bodies being brought in to feed their ravenous hunger. Most striking had been the fleeting glimpse he had seen of what he could only assume was the queen. A monstrous creature of immense size, an alien intelligence gleaming in its eyes. It was enough to make his granite skin feel brittle. "Are you well, Ternate Lazus?" Korin Neum, the second of the triad, asked. "I need a moment to recover, Neum." The mind of the monster was bizarre and alien. "I learned more than I wanted to, I think. Knowledge of the monster." The second leaned closer. "Surely that is valuable to us. Were you able to confirm we have found the right creature?" Granin frowned and lowered his voice. "Do not speak not of this now. Not all are with us." Neum pulled back, properly chastened by his Ternate. Fortunately, the younger Golgaran mind shaper was spared having his blushes seen by the dark basalt he had chosen for his true skin. The third member of the triad, Torina Lakshan, stood quietly, recovering. The strain of their group working was showing on her face. "Take the time you need to recover your strength, Lakshan," Neum told her. "The other triads will need more time to properly subdue our target." The weary mind shaper looked toward her elder and nodded her understanding. Neum couldn't help but grunt. Not one for many words was his youngest apprentice. Feeling his age, he scratched at his granite-coated arms and groaned aloud as he sat on a nearby rock outcropping. The beginnings of a headache were starting to grind the stones in his old head, and there was no escaping it. He'd pay a high price for the shaping he'd undertaken this day. In some ways he couldn't wait to lay eyes on the monster who'd needed a full triad of mind shapers to knock it out and managed to avoid capture from two triads of the Golgari's famed warriors. "Hopefully this creature will be the key we need," he muttered to himself. For the next 10 minutes he and his fellow triad members rested and recovered their strength as each fought to stave off the pain that blossomed in their heads. Conversation sputtered to nothing, as none among them would cope well with speaking in the midst of their suffering. Stone skin they might have, but stone minds they did not. Not far away the shriek and clang of combat continued as the other triads fought off the myriad creatures lured down by their quarry's ingenious call. The shapers were left out of it, thankfully. When another 5 minutes had passed, the noise finally dimmed and Granin felt in control of himself enough to summon his team and move to meet the creature he had helped to capture. Still weary, he did his best to conceal it and trudged toward the others. He was quickly confronted by an angry pair of eyes that belonged to the leader of this expedition, an experienced delver with a powerful sword arm and solid skills. Granin didn't like him. The other had chosen limestone streaked with silver as his true skin, a laughable indulgence of vanity. It made the Golgari warrior shine with color and reflect the light like liquid metal, but the stone was brittle and weak. "About time you crawled over here. Some of us have been working." Granin ignored the pup. He had eyes only for the monster, the next candidate to attempt to bear the red truth. Chapter 339 Phase 2, Thing. Granin felt hopeful in his heart as moved closer to the creature. He had anticipated this moment since he had been informed a new ancient candidate had been identified. Even better, one whom the Abyssal Legion was ignorant of. He'd had to exert a great deal of effort, alongside the other members of the cult, to put together a few delves to search the second strata beneath the ruins of Lyria, and by some miracle they'd found it. Golgari stood in their triads around the monster, their weapons drawn and eyes darting attentively. Several bore exterior damage to their true skin, a testament to the difficulty they had endured, but Granin focused his attention on the creature. It was large, larger than he expected. 6 thin, dark legs rose from the second of its body segments before they bent sharply back down to the ground. The mandibles looked barbaric, long and jagged, with spikes for gripping, ridges for crushing and tearing, and judging by the broad head, plenty of muscle mass behind them. Surprisingly colorful for an ant, the monster's body was a rust-red color, but the gleam of light off that carapace showed it had been coated with another substance. Most disconcerting were the eyes. Multifaceted and unblinking, those eyes stared in all directions at once, watching all of them. He felt certain a fierce intelligence and powerful will to survive resided there. Surrounded by 6 warriors with blades drawn and held down by weighted netting, Granin didn't doubt for a second that the monstrous ant would be desperate to escape. He would need to communicate with it, and soon, to prevent tragedy from occurring. "Are you listening to me?" An outraged voice broke into the shaper's thoughts. The old shaper suppressed a sigh and turned away from his magnificent catch to address the younger Golgari. He reminded himself to be patient, that out in the dungeon, it was not he who made the decisions. One false move could undo the work that the cult had done to get to this point. He wouldn't let it come to that. I apologize, Warrior Balta. I was distracted by the monster you and your brave men and women have been able to capture. Your family's reputation is clearly well deserved. One didn't become an elder shaper without a century or two worth of schmoozing practice under the skin. His smooth words had the desired effect as he witnessed the puffed-up scion of a wealthy house swallow his anger at being ignored and allow his childish temper to be tamped by the praise directed to his family. So long as you understand who is the leader of this expedition. It is you, of course. The words came easy to the wily shaper's lips. As the highest-leveled warrior among us, the responsibility is yours. The shaper smoothed over the rough stone and placated the younger warrior, inwardly muttering at the ridiculous necessity of it. Calm now that the proper deference had been shown, Corinum Balta gestured with one glittering hand to the restrained monster. I'm not sure why it was so necessary I come out here to restrain this thing. Should I remove the core? No. Granin exclaimed before he moderated his tone. No, he repeated, it is not for the core that the shapers sought to capture this monster. Now that we have it, we are to transport it via gateway to the Field Academy. Beneath Ogrenor, the silver-flecked face of Corinum twisted at the incredulous nature of these instructions. Transport the creature. Has your true skin turned your brain to granite? This monster wasn't easy for us to capture. How are we supposed to march through an expanse and bring it with us? Just kill the thing and be done with it. As if you could have caught it without us, Granin grumbled internally. He interjected to cut off the hot-headed idiot before he took a sword to the precious specimen, keenly aware that all this time they were being watched by the unblinking eyes of the monster. Whilst I defer to your command in the field, Balta, I will have to remind you that the Shapers' Circle has provided the funding for this delve and set the terms. Should we return without the creature alive, then that would surely become a blemish on your record. Balta's eyes widened as he felt outrage boil up inside him. A blemish on his record. Unthinkable. Fine. He spat. We will bring the creature back, alive. But I will ensure it is crippled for the journey. I won't accept arguments on this. The safety of the Triads is my highest priority. Being a vengeful little ass is your highest priority. Granin controlled himself and refrained from speaking. So long as they could get the candidate monster back to the cult, all would be well. Hopefully it wouldn't be too angered by the limestone idiot's antics. If you will allow me, leader, I would like to have a moment to work my craft on the creature. I may be able to intimidate or dominate it into cooperation. Balta grunted and turned away, displaying the contempt for shaping that was so common amongst his class. This suited Granin just fine. The less eyes on him for this moment, the better. He took a breath and closed his eyes to center himself. His head still throbbed from his earlier exertions, and this was a risky thing to do. If the monster attacked him, it would be difficult to fend it off in his weakened state. The fact that the ant was capable of mind magic was one of the few things the cult knew about it. Granin steadied his breathing and centered himself before began to weave a mind bridge between himself and the creature. He didn't try to hide what he was doing, and the giant ant watched him from only 10 meters away, perfectly, disturbingly still. An old and experienced shaper with extremely high skill levels, it didn't take him long to form the connection. He was hesitant to solidify the link, but he couldn't hesitate for long. Who knew how much time Balta would give him? Do not be alarmed. I only mean to speak with you. I do not mean you harm. The ant didn't move or react in any way. Not even a twitch of its long and dangling antennae. Finally, a voice echoed back in Granin's mind. You've got a strange way of showing it, Rocky. Chapter 340 Custody. A fearsome pressure was exerted from the powerful monster. Even surrounded and tied down with heavy weights, Granin couldn't help but take a step back as that voice echoed in his mind through their link. He swallowed hard and sought to quickly clarify himself. You've spoken to one of my order before. A Carmado, named Evrantep. A pause. The wizard lizard. You know him. You're a member of his conclave thingy. The Golgari shaper felt his skin itch. The tone of the monster was light, airy, but from it he sensed a dangerous and potent air. The dichotomy of impressions was enough to put him on edge. Yes and no. I don't have much time, so I must speak quickly. Will you give me a moment? Do I have much choice? You do. It's not our intention to force you, but circumstances have forced my hand. All right then, Stone Man. I'm listening. Granin secretly took a calming breath as he put his thoughts in order. My people are called the Golgari, and among us those who wield magic are called Shapers, and we are regarded beneath those who employ the warrior arts. Stupid. I won't disagree, but it is important I explain this so you understand the dynamics of this hunting party and the reason we have sought you. I must urgently tell you that I am not in charge of this expedition, and not all of my people here are members of the cult. I want you to come alive, but others would be happy to see you dead. I encourage you to cooperate, even though it may not seem to be in your best interests, as otherwise you will surely perish. He was mostly thinking of the imminent arrival of their moronic leader to break the legs of this precious specimen. Keep talking and I'll think about it. As you say. Let me quickly tell you how I came to be here. The cult enclave where I study was contacted by Ivrintep because we were the closest members to where it was assumed you would travel. He told us he had identified a promising candidate monster and that we should attempt to be aware of your progress and growth. Normally the matter would drop there. It's not our policy to attempt to force a monster to ascend, but circumstances have taken a dramatic change recently. So you and the Karmado are members of the same group. A brief hesitation. How to explain several thousand years of interconnected history between secret societies? Sort of. He hedged. You could think of us as branches of the same organization. More accurately, my cult and the Conclave are separate entities that share common purpose. You want to raise the 20th Ancient. Exactly. So we cooperate. Since you were known to be coming into our sphere of influence, he passed his knowledge of you on to us. Which led to me being hunted down like an animal. How? I was getting to that. Step aside, Shaper, came the cold and superior tones of Balta. Stifling a groan, Granin raced to inform the monster of what was happening. This idiot is the warrior leader of the expedition. I cannot overrule his commands in the field, even though I represent the people who funded it. He has demanded that we cripple you for the journey. Journey. Cripple. Talk fast, rock face. I can take this guy down and all of us will go with him if I don't like what I hear. Such a claim was bold, but considering the strange magic the monster was able to employ, not impossible. He wants to break your legs, I think. That will make it harder for you to escape as we transport you back to the custody of the cult. No further harm will come to you on this trip, I give my word. What about after this trip? I suppose it's all beach chairs and milkshakes after that. I'll trust you, but I want something in return. What? Lazus. Step to one side so I can ensure the safety of our expedition. You wouldn't want to be accused of standing between a warrior and the execution of their duty, would you? Granin cursed under his breath. What is it, monster? Quickly. Find my pets, heal them and bring them with us. Done. The old Golgari broke the link and stepped away from the giant ant before he turned to the warrior leader, dipping his head in a show of respect. I have been able to subdue the monster to some degree. You will find it cooperative. I do not believe that it is necessary to inflict harm upon it. The circle of Shapers seeks to bring the beast in alive, after all. My triad are more than willing to take over responsibility for the safe handling of the monster. Corinam Balta was in no mood to placate a member of a lesser profession. He waved a hand dismissively in the older Golgari's face and promptly ignored him. He stepped toward the monster and unsheathed his blade. The soft ring of steel resounded in the air and the low light reflected from the perfectly imbued blade. Balta was eager for this moment. Not only had the monster embarrassed him by escaping from in front of his face, he'd been forced to rely on the Shapers twice. Once to locate it again and twice to ensure it was captured. He would strike back now to put both offending parties in their place. Granin stifled his protests as the blade struck twice, the sword light flashing expertly along each side of the monster, severing its legs cleanly. Balta wasn't sure what he expected the creature's reaction to be, but he was sure it wasn't what he got, which was nothing. The creature remained perfectly still, its antennae still, its eyes alert and staring. There was a moment of tense silence as the warriors waited for a violent response from this beast, but none was forthcoming. Disgruntled, Balta sheathed his blade, and it was at that moment the ant gradually opened its mandibles and then snapped them shut. Clack asterisk. It repeated the gesture with the same deliberate pace, over and over. Clack, 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 clack. As each sound rang out like soft, repeated laughter, Balta's face became uglier. Finally he snapped and ripped the blade from his sheath in a rage. You dare to mock me, beast. The great two-handed sword swept down faster than the eye could see, the blade light flashing out in a blinding arc to slice directly into the face of the ant. So unexpected was this behavior that all stood frozen in shock as the blow struck home. Granin himself was filled with despair that turned to relief, and the light cleared to show the ant stood as it had before, a small scratch carved into its carapace right between its eyes. Even as the stunned crowd watched, the small groove began to heal itself, filling up with a thick fluid that began to harden into fresh exoskeleton. This time, Granin could not contain himself and burst out at the expedition leader. Balta, I insist that you refrain from attacking the creature. We are specifically tasked with returning it, alive. The silver-speckled Golgari warrior stood breathing heavily with rage still in his eyes as he witnessed the poor efficacy of his strike. Even with its legs severed, the creature seemed to watch him, completely unafraid. Before the shocked eyes of the hunting party, the mandibles once again slowly opened wide before snapping shut. Clack. 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 Chapter 341. Not a fan. Are you all right, Granin? The old shaper raised his head wearily to meet the concerned gaze of his youngest triad member. Torina Laksham gleamed in the darkness of the Shadow Realm, a product of the ore she'd been able to obtain to form her true skin, an infused variant of manganese she'd stumbled on by chance. He tried not to glance at the padded leather armor that covered her left leg. He should probably be grateful the warrior circle left her any of the precious material at all, but he couldn't help but feel bitter and suspect they'd ensured that she wouldn't have enough to form a whole skin. She was tough as nails though, more than willing to bear the shame of being incomplete in order to utilize the enhanced properties of the ore to enhance her shaping. The circle had high expectations of her, as did the cult. I'm fine, he muttered, waving away her concerns. When you get to my age, these jaunts in the dungeon become more taxing on the system. A pair of serious eyes looked down on him as he rested after his recent exertions. The confrontation between Balta and the monster had put everyone on edge. The creature appeared more than willing to try to get under the silver fool's skin, and being a puffed-up warrior, the glorious leader was unwilling to endure what he saw as an inferior creature's mocking. In the end, his own triad members had been forced to restrain the enraged warrior before he'd thrown himself upon the restrained monster in a blind rage. A ridiculous display for an esteemed member of the warrior circle and a complete embarrassment for his family. Granin was hoping they'd settle for paying off the members of the Delve to keep it quiet rather than resort to more extreme measures. Not that the monster cared. I don't think I've ever seen a creature with such a low sense of self-preservation, he burst out. Laksham raised one stony eyebrow. You expected the candidate to cooperate after we chased it down and abducted it. I think he's being well behaved, all things considered. Granin was a little taken aback. That sounds a little familiar. Have you been communicating with the specimen much, Laksham? He knew she'd been speaking to it via a mind bridge, as had Niam, the second of the triad. It was necessary that he himself not be the only one making contact with the creature. But now he began to suspect that they may have been speaking more than he assumed. She shrugged. This is the first time I've come into contact with a proper candidate. You can't blame for being curious. What if he's the one? Don't let your imagination run wild, he rebuked the young shaper. It's not a proper candidate yet. I'm not certain what the leadership is planning right now. This isn't the sort of action that we would normally take. I do know that the cult hasn't decided to throw our support behind this creature yet. You really shouldn't refer to him as an it. You know as well as I do that he's a sapient creature. He was a human before he was reborn here as a monster. He deserves to be treated with some respect. I won't hold him being human against him, Granin retorted. You need to recognize that whatever it was before, it is now a creature of the dungeon. A monster. We may have a different opinion of creatures from the dungeon than most people, but there is still a certain level of caution that I recommend in you. They don't play by the same rules we do, and we must always be cautious in our dealings with them. I am always careful, Laksham stated, her gaze steady and calm. Granin rolled his eyes and pushed himself back onto his weary feet. He wasn't about to argue with the young shaper. He wouldn't win even if he tried. She was as stubborn as an actual rock, this one. It wasn't a problem. She was smart and cautious. He could trust her to make good decisions. It was the other shaper in his triad he was worried about. Niam could be a little more impetuous and things might get complicated if the monster was able to sway him into doing something stupid. It's almost time to perform the healing again, isn't it? Laksham spoke suddenly. Granin groaned. Damn it, I'd almost forgotten. Could you handle it this time? I need to go find Niam. A nod was his only reply before Laksham moved away into the darkness surrounded them, making her way toward the monster's ape pet. He almost envied the ease with which she was able to sense it out. At her age he hadn't been able to wield a fraction of that sort of skill. Pushing his misplaced jealousy aside, Granin moved back toward the rest of the group. They weren't far away. The warrior triad stood close together, keeping watch over their cargo. The monster seemed to be behaving itself, its antennae looping in slow lazy circles as its legless body remained perfectly still. He wasn't sure how, but he just knew that it was paying close attention to him the moment he walked into sight. It was unnerving being around a creature whose line of sight was impossible to track. He quickly wove a mind bridge to his fellow shaper in order to communicate. Privately, Niam, has the specimen told us where its other pet has gone? Not a word about it. Denies everything. I feel like if I keep asking, he's going to start denying even having a second pet. Granin grimaced. I know for a fact that they communicated when the ape came in for healing. All I want to know is that there isn't some creature out there plotting an ambush or some desperate rescue attempt that will get people killed. Come on, Granin. He's not that stupid. This is a highly intelligent monster we have here. He knows he isn't getting away. He's quite pleasant once you get to know him. Right. I'm going to limit your contact with the specimen for the rest of this trip. What? Why? You're getting too close to the specimen. To Anthony. You know its name. Of course. Me and Anthony are buds. He couldn't help but sigh and pinch his brow. Did young members of the cult lack caution towards monsters completely these days? The idea of the cult was to raise up a new ancient, yes. That didn't mean that they make nice with every monster to fall into their hands. That's it. No more communicating with the monster for you. Go help the slightly more sensible member of our triad to heal the ape pet. I'll deal with this. Breaking of the connection, he rewove the mind bridge toward the monster who sat still and innocent looking as a 1,000-kilogram lamb. Trying to make my people sympathetic. The antennae flicked in such a way as to elicit exasperation. I've been dragged around legless for days now, you stone-headed stonehead. You can hardly blame me for reaching out for a chat. How much longer until we get to this gate anyway? 2 more days. You make sure you behave until then. I'll be good. Chapter 342 Gateway. The pain Granin had been experiencing in his head had only grown more pronounced as they continued to travel toward the Golgari Gateway network. Having banned his 2 fellow triad members from conversing with the specimen, he was forced to take responsibility for all communication onto his own shoulders. This had quickly proven to be both irritating and exasperating. Being dragged, legless, through the expanse and into the tunnels over a period of days wouldn't do anyone's mood any good, but Granin was starting to believe that the creature was diverting its frustration into annoying him and trying to provoke Balta at every opportunity. Like the time the leader had walked behind the monster, a foolish move as it turned out. From seemingly nowhere, the creature had unleashed a blast of sticky acid that had etched away the warrior's true skin before they'd been able to remove it, an affront that had driven him almost berserk with rage. No matter how many times he warned the monster that antagonizing a powerful and connected individual like Balta was a bad idea, it didn't seem to care. After the acid attack came more clacking laughter every time the warrior came near. Balta had attacked the monster twice more, the second time managing to cut through the carapace and draw blood. Not that the creature seemed too perturbed, the injury was healed in minutes. During this period of observation, Granin took copious notes. His role as a member of the Circle of Shapers and member of the cult meant he was well versed with documenting monster characteristics, not to mention his superiors in the cult would expect a full report of the monster. Initially he'd had some doubts about the capability of the creature. An ant was historically pathetically weak by itself. Terrifying in large numbers, to be sure, but amongst the dungeon's most unthreatening creatures when battled alone. That this specimen had managed to accrue such strength and powerful evolutions from such a weak base was fascinating. Of course, the reborn monsters, those whose soul had been reborn, either experienced an accelerated start due to their greater than the average monster intelligence, or burned out spectacularly, unable to adjust to their new existence. The cult had found several such creatures over the centuries, not many compared to how many were created by the dungeon, but they were documented obsessively when they were found. Several had been sponsored by the cult, but none had been able to achieve the seat of the final ancient. Granin didn't hold much hope for this particular specimen, but he was starting to think more of it than he had at first. Any chance you remember where your second servant went? You know, I honestly don't remember having a second servant, me and Tiny, that's the way it's been for a long time. You know, I could stop healing your ape friend. How long do you think he would last if that happened? I could kill you, me and everyone here with one spell. Let's play nice, Aren't you trying to cooperate with me? Holy moly. There's no need to get your knickers in a twist. Make sure you heal my ape and bring him along with us, and I'll have another reason to go along with what you say. Accept the leverage I'm offering you. The blasted creature had a point. Despite the obvious intelligence, impressive defensive ability and magical prowess, he wasn't sure the monster would be successful in receiving the support of the cult. They'd been cultivating monsters of their own, they had prospects they'd been supporting from the shadows for a long time, it wouldn't be easy to supplant these established prospects. Although something different was brewing at the cult. The air had felt tense lately, ever since the strangely extended and potent wave had occurred. Granin wasn't close enough to the upper echelons to have an inkling what they were thinking, but something about the atmosphere was growing colder, people were on edge and a flurry of urgent meetings had been arranged. That in and of itself was unusual, the cult was a secret society after all, mobilizing the members quickly and quietly wasn't easy. Final checks. Shapers to the fore. Came a loud call. Granin looked up to see the triads in defensive position around their quarry. The creature was close to motionless as usual, the only sign it was paying any attention was its slowly waving antennae. It had taken 5 days since the capture of the monster to get to this point, far longer than it would usually take. Forced to drag the creature through the expanse and into the tunnels to get here, it had not been a journey that anyone had enjoyed. He began to suspect that even Balta began to regret his impulsive decision to hack off the monster's legs. They'd finally made it. Before them stood a seeming dead end, a tunnel that ended in an innocuous wall like a billion other tunnels in the dungeon. This is a gate. Break off this connection, I need to concentrate for this. You're the one who opens it. What kind of magic is this anyway? Spatial. Be quiet. This is hard. Makes sense, I suppose. Puncturing a hole in space or time or whatever should be difficult. I'm not talking anymore. Oh, right. Gotcha. Good luck, stone man. Granin, Niam and Lascum gathered together facing the end of the tunnel and raised their hands. He focused hard and reached out to connect his mind to that of his second, Niam. What made this even more difficult was that he wouldn't be able to draw on the assistance of Laksham, since she was occupied concealing the great ape they'd been forced to heal and keep alive in the shadows over the journey. This meant that the two of them would need to work even harder to shape this working. Still, Granin was an old hand, under his guidance. They reached out to reveal and then activate the runes etched into the tunnel wall. Enchanted monster cores buried into the wall came alive and began to funnel mana from the dungeon and fuel the gate. The runes formed a circle around the edges of the tunnel wall and gradually a pinpoint of pure light appeared in the center. Here in the second strata, such a thing was blinding and Granin had his eyes firmly closed. He needed to work with his mind, not his eyes. With the assistance of his second, he reached through the hole with his mind and entered the in-between space, a blank world of white that seemed to stretch forever in all directions. He expertly oriented himself and directed his thoughts toward the direction he needed and honed in on the mind reaching back toward him. Like people clasping hands, they locked onto each other and began to solidify the link, forming a bridge of pure mana between the two gates. The gate will open in 5 seconds, he ground out. We'll hold it for 20, no more than that. Balta nodded. This was Shaper business and he had no place sticking his nose into it, not that any warrior would lower themselves to do so. Grab the ropes and haul. He commanded and the hunting party leapt to follow his order, hauling the monster toward the gate, picking up speed as the tiny circle of light widened to occupy the entire circle within the runes. The light was blinding and the monster struggled weakly as they dragged it forward, unable to protect its eyes. Fortunately, it didn't last long. In just a few seconds the warriors had dragged it through and vanished into the light, they would appear instantly on the other side. All that was left were the 3 shapers and their hidden guest. Are you ready, Laksham? A terse nod was all Granin got to acknowledge his words and he nodded back. Seconds later she was gone, followed by Niam. The final remaining shaper, Granin grit his teeth as he held the gate without Niam assisting him and walked forward slowly so as not to break concentration. The moment he stepped through the gate melted behind him, as if he had thrown himself from a cliff that had collapsed. The instant his feet left the ground he felt a rush of adrenaline as the pathway began to collapse behind him. For a dizzying second he felt as if he might be lost in the between space, but then he was through and sucking in a deep breath to calm his pounding heart. We made it home. The monster watched him with glittering eyes, its thoughts inscrutable. As the members of the delve stretched and began to relax, their attention was seized by a strange popping sound. Turning toward the creature they saw that its legs were regenerating at a visible rate. In only a few minutes it was able to stand on its own. Clack. After a single snap of the mandibles, it sat back down again. Chapter 343 Escaping. The gate emerged into a dark tunnel. The telltale black veins of mana threaded through the walls signaled that they remained in the second strata, but Granin knew they have traveled a great distance. Over 100 kilometers in fact. The delving party were now firmly within the territory claimed by Galgarin the Empire to the east of Lyria, beyond the Great Lake. They stood in a near-empty tunnel, almost identical to that which they had left on the other side, with the exception of a small outpost that hosted a team of shapers on rotating duty. Having connected the gate, the triad of shapers responsible for this side of the gate nodded politely to the delving team, curiously eyed the enormous ant they had dragged through with them before retreating behind the outpost door to rest. Granin heaved out a breath as he let the terrible feeling of being the last through the gate to leach out of him. Balta was having none of it. Let us be away. I want to arrive with the beast at the warrior's circle to turn in the request and retire. Let's move. After snapping out his orders, the prideful warrior turned and began to march away, leaving the others scrambling to follow his wishes and seize the ropes attached to the netting to drag the monster away. Granin sputtered for a moment in shock before he threw off his lethargy and raised his voice. Warrior Balta, the request does not require us to return the creature to the warrior's circle but to the shaper's outpost beyond the city. The moment he heard the older Golgarin speak, Balta turned on his heel and strode back toward the shaper. The moment he was close enough he slammed his fist into Granin's stomach, his fist grinding into the hard granite skin. Instantly overwhelmed by the warrior's strength, Granin collapsed to his knees gasping for breath. Balta looked down on him dispassionately, shaking his fist. Do not gainsay my orders in the field, Shaper. Thanks to your wretched circle, the city is still an hour's march from the gate, which means I still have complete authority over this delve. If you seek to countermand my orders one more time, I'll have you put to death for insubordination. Do you understand me? Mind racing, Granin tried to understand what was happening as he coughed and tried to catch his breath on his hands and knees. To one side, Niam knelt beside him and placed a hand on his back in concern. What was Batla up to? He was within his rights to flex his authority here. He was technically correct to state that they were still in the field and that he still held absolute command over the delve. But why bother? The request required them to return the monster to the Shaper's outpost. Why would he want to drag it all the way to the warrior's circle? When he attempted to hand in the request, he would be refused and have to turn around and take the monster back out of the city and to the outpost as was required. As Balta turned to march away, Granin saw him glance toward the monster and his heart dropped in his chest. This idiot warrior. He wanted revenge. In the warrior's circle the Shapers would have no allies, no one they could depend upon to help. Balta would have a number of ways he could delay them long enough for his clan to invite the warriors to rest at their compound, naturally taking the monster with them. Once it was there, it would never emerge and they would say an accident occurred, pay reparations to the Shapers and forget about it. If Granin tried to object inside the city, then he would be invited as well, along with his triad, and they would share the fate of the creature. The warriors hefted their ropes and began to drag the monster after the swiftly marching Balta, but the moment the ropes became taut they jerked to a halt. They looked back confused, only to see the monster had dug in with its regrown legs and was refusing to move. The warriors shared a confused look before they redoubled their effort, only to see the monster working even harder to resist, using its considerable size and strength to resist the pull. 8 Golgari warriors then began to engage in a ridiculous game of tug-of-war with a massive insect. The warriors were powerful, filled with the strength the Golgari were famous for, and although it was slow, they began to make progress. Clack. Asterisk. The ant unleashed an irritated clack of its mandibles and decided to change the playing field. The ground shifted and dirt began to fly as it employed earth magic to dig itself into a hole in a matter of seconds, causing the warriors to curse under their breath. Balta continued to march away, confident that his arrangements would be followed and ignorant of the growing mess getting further and further behind him. If the monster could hold out against the warriors, then Granin had a chance of completing his task yet. He turned to Laksham, who was clearly straining to maintain the glamour she had cast over the ape monster. You won't be able to hold on for much longer, Laksham. Run toward the outpost and try to reach the circle there. If we can get enough people here, then we can take the monster there ourselves. Go. Quick on the uptake. She understood what the older Shaper was trying to say and turned to run immediately. Still on the ground, Granin forced his tired mind to weave the threads of mana required to connect his mind to the monsters. You need to tell your ape to go with Laksham and cooperate. What the heck is going on here, Stone Face? The silver guy is being more of a douchebag than usual. I told you provoking him would have consequences. He's trying to get you taken to the warrior's circle so he can have you killed off. You need to hold out until we can bring more of my people here to take custody of you. Alright, fine. Sure, I can't kill him. If you kill him, there's no saving you from the vengeance that will come. Okay. Okay. Sheesh. I'll turtle up here. Neum. Granin whispered to his second. Go after Laksham and help keep her safe, then return with the Shapers. Once Balta comes back, we'll have to follow orders or he'll cut us down. Better there were only one Shaper here than two. Are you sure you're alright? I'll be fine. Get out of here. The younger Golgari took off like a shot, and by the time Balta finally realized nobody was following him and returned, both he and Laksham were out of sight. Eyes filled with rage, it was clear the leader knew what had happened. He couldn't delay any longer. If the monster wasn't going to cooperate, that was all the excuse he needed. The creature is attempting to fight back. Destroy it. Shaper Granin. Invade the creature's mind and annihilate it. This is an order. Without the support of my triad it will be impossible, Warrior Balta. Granin tried to demur. If isn't done in 5 minutes I'll declare you a traitor and put you down myself. Corinam Balta was in frothing rage at this point. His 8-foot frame quivered with anger and his sword leapt from its scabbard, flashing sword light toward the monster before he had even finished speaking. This guy has serious anger issues. The creature sounded wryly amused as the blows began to rain down on it, even cutting through the defensive layer of dirt it had created. The other warriors quickly joined in, surrounding the creature from all sides and hacking at it with abandon. If I don't incapacitate you in 5 minutes he's going to kill me too. He's lost it. You really are a pain in my thorax, you know that. You could have just left me chilling in the expanse. Would that have been such a bad thing? But oh no, had to capture me and drag me back to you stupid cult. Why would I even want to be an ancient? I was happy back with my colony. Should have stuck with them, then I wouldn't be in this mess. You'd really want to live with a collective of mindless monsters. Mindless. Well, yes, mindless. But they didn't kidnap me and get me jumped by a pack of stone-skinned sword maniacs. I take your point, but how are we going to get out here? The warriors continued to pour strikes onto the hardened carapace of the monster as sparks flew everywhere. At this range it was difficult for the warriors to inflict real damage, especially since the monster was wily, never giving them a good angle or allowing them to close the distance. The creature defended itself as best it could without fighting back, shifting its body to deflect blows and trying to disrupt the footing of the enemy. By shifting the earth beneath their feet, but it was being worn down. Only one thing for it, I suppose. That was all the warning Granin got before the ant exploded out from its hiding hole with extreme speed, rushing toward him and snatching him up in its mandibles. Bolts of purple mana flew out from the creature to strike against the warriors repeatedly, one bolt every few seconds. Granin strangled a cry in his throat as he saw the monster fight back, but it didn't seem as if they suffered any damage from the magic. I'm just slowing them down. Although, pow. Acid flew from the creature's bulbous backside and coated Balta from head to toe as he readied another strike against the monster. Then they were off, speeding down the tunnel as bolts of magic continued to fly back at their pursuing warriors. So which way to the cult? The bright, positive voice of the monster rang inside Granin's head. Dangling from the jaws of this giant ant, he could only think that his headache had grown significantly worse. Chapter 344 Run. To captivity. Stop wriggling. Came the irritated thoughts of the monster. Granin resolutely continued to wriggle. He wasn't about to remain locked in the jaws of a monster that wasn't under his direct control. If you don't settle down I'll either drop you and leave you for the Silver Surfer back there, or I'll start to wonder who your cult would rather see turn up alive, me or you. The Shaper couldn't help but splutter at that. You really think they'd welcome you after you killed the cult member sent to capture you? The two of them were still speeding away, the 6 legs of the ant flashing with incredible speed to propel the enormous bulk of the creature forward. Behind them the 9 warriors, led by a Balta so irate he was practically frothing at the mouth, or that might be acid, chased them through the tunnels. Split up ahead, left or right, and you know what? I bet it wouldn't be the first time a cult member was killed by the monster they were supposed to look after. I can imagine Garalosh going through a few such as yourself. Left. And I assure you that isn't the case. Despite his bluster, Granin couldn't help but reduce the effort he put into his wiggling dramatically. Much as I thought. Cozying up to monsters is rather risky work, I would imagine. Don't question the sacred mission of the cult. Look, I'm not questioning it. I'm just saying that monsters tend to want to eat things that will give them experience. By the by, just out of curiosity, what level are you? Not that high. Low actually. I barely have a class, in fact. Relax, buddy. I'm not going to eat you. You do notice me carrying you to safety right now. Are you experiencing all of the not being eaten that is occurring at this time? I am. Right. Let's remember where we are right now. We are in a place to. Left or right? Right. Great. We're in a place where I have no idea how to get back to where we were before. We could have traveled to the other side of the world for all I know. Not to mention you have my ape, and let's presume that there's a whole massive load of you stoneheads about the place right now. You understand what I'm getting at. How are you casting all this magic while talking? Multiple brains, my man. Divide and conquer. Why? Multiple brains. You have more than one brain. Of course. I can devote an entire brain to thinking about how annoying running away from you stone folk is a massive pain in the business district at all times. Useful. No. Wouldn't it be better to learn the split thought skill? The what now? Granin bit his tongue, metaphorically, at that. Naturally, the monster read into his sudden silence. Interesting. Wouldn't mind telling me how to unlock that, would you? I'd rather not. Oh no. My mandibles are slipping. The powerful jaws holding him aloft flexed dangerously, pinching him around the ribs, but Granin was unmoved. I won't. I said too much already. TCH. Cheapskate. Left up here. Right. Damn. These guys are persistent. Sword light continued to flash around them as the warriors gave chase. Their powerful sword skills required the monster to skitter from side to side with insane reaction speeds to dodge or tank hits, focusing on keeping its legs unharmed. Bolts of purple magic flew out every few seconds, disrupting the followers' formation and occasionally scoring a hit. What does that spell even do? Granin asked, bewildered. You want information from me but won't hand out your own. That's cheap, man. I'll share. That way at least one of us is a nice guy. It makes them heavier. Makes them heavier. Is that? What kind of magic is that? I think I'll keep that little tidbit to myself. I do need a few strong cards up my carapace, after all. Granin could admit to himself that was fair enough. He didn't know what the cult had planned for this monster, honestly no idea. With the strange currents at play, it was probably for the best if this creature was careful with its secrets. It wasn't as if everything had gone according to his own plans up to this point. You really are keeping ahead of them fairly well. He couldn't help but sound impressed. If you lot hadn't knocked me out, you really think I would have been caught so easily? I'd love to know how you did that. You know mind magic, don't you? Granin was confused. Not as well as I thought I did, apparently. The pursuit was hot and dangerous, but somehow Granin felt himself engaging almost against his will. Perhaps the threat of imminent harm was enough to lower his guard and make him open up to the creature. This is one of the things the cult could help you with. Developing your skills, teaching you secret unlocks and mutations. We have over 1,000 years of history and research trying to get monsters to be as strong as they can possibly be. It's not like I have much choice, is it? I have to rely on you guys now. You've not given me a whole lot of choice on that front. I suppose not. Granin paused to reflect for a moment. It's not usually like this, you know. You were human once, we know that. Normally we would reach out and speak to you, negotiate, see if your goals were aligned with ours. We don't strong-arm intelligent monsters like you. Something changed, We'll find out soon enough, I suppose. Holy moly. Do these guys ever run out of stamina? Not likely. Our racial bonus helps us out on that front. Racial bonus? What the hell? It's not like you monsters don't get your own perks. I don't get stronger by eating, for example. Apparently you get strong just by being born. Take a right here and slow down. You might start to see others of my kind, so be careful. Slow down. I'll get chopped to heck. No, you won't. We're close now and Balta knows it. He can't keep following for long. My people will come to meet us soon. It's over. Alright then, you're the boss. I hope my ape is okay. Chapter 345, Changing Circumstances. It is something of a fascination of mine, I admit it, Bioram. Do you not feel the same? Such brief conversations have such far-reaching consequences. 2 separate, strong-minded, high-level individuals, in positions of authority and respect come into contact with these ancient murder machines. I know you consider it blasphemous, but let us not quibble about the facts. Yeram is projected to have devoured hundreds of thousands of my kind at least, and everything changes. They drop their previous positions and begin to work against, in many cases, their own society, and risk bringing the wrath of the immensely powerful Abyssal Legion down upon their heads. What in the good name of Pangera did they say? Oh, I know what you'll say, Bioram. We know exactly what they said, it's in the Book of the Red Truth, and roll your eyes at me as you always do. But you have to admit that there is no way to ensure that the revelations of the book are complete. Something could have been left out. How would you possibly know? You can't just go on blindly assuming that the author was a good and reliable narrator without proof. And when it's literally a book about a conversation between two entities, it's impossible to confirm any of it. Now don't you send me another letter filled with your threats and nonsense about disrespect. I've been a member of the cult for 80 years. 80 years in the field, mind you, now putting my heels up and theorizing like some, I might add. My dedication to the cause is beyond question. All I'm asking is that you seriously engage with the question. I just can't imagine what form that dialogue took. Mind magic was involved. Naturally, was there manipulation on either end? Both individuals were, reportedly, among the most powerful and high-level magic users our respective societies have ever produced, certainly capable of mental warfare. Then again, the ancients were absurdly powerful beings akin to gods. Even if mind magic wasn't a particular strength of the Everworm, it can't be ruled out that it could dominate the mind of a mortal. It can't be helped, Biorum. I can't be cured of this feverish curiosity. I burn to know the answers to these impossible questions. Sadly, most of my compatriots share your own, very unscholarly, lack of rigor on this subject. Holy texts should be subjected to the same level of academic scholar as other works, if not more. Your continual refusal to see this is a definite point against your academic reputation. At least with me. Letter from Scholar Poron Alak to Biorum Salistan in the year 1432 AC. Granin trudged through the halls of the Shaper Circle outpost, still rattled by his journey pinched in the mandibles of a giant ant. Luckily the creature had sufficient control not to pierce through his true skin. Granite may not be the most expensive material to replace, one of the reasons Ganon had made the practical selection, but having to walk amongst his peers with a damaged skin would be shameful to say the least. He could be grateful. Maybe grateful was too strong a word. He could acknowledge that Balta had finally seen the light and backed off before he'd been confronted by the 20 Shapers who'd rushed out to meet them. He hadn't been sure that would happen, especially after he was drenched in acid. A battle in the tunnels between the warriors and Shapers would have been a major incident to say the least. Still, the look of poorly suppressed rage on Balta's face as he'd been forced to back down made Granin doubt they'd heard the last of the incident. No doubt the senior Shapers were in a tizzy over the issue, and the cult would be shaking their heads at the unwanted attention. Granin Lazus, here to see the leading triad. He pulled up outside a wide and imposing pair of double doors, the dark wooden beams inlaid with strips of polished stone. Two tall Golgari Shapers dressed in ceremonial robes draped from their waists down, leaving their upper body bare stood on either side of the doors. As one they turned to open the doors, their hands freezing onto the stone and their powerful frames shifting the weight with ease. Inside was a tasteful office, drab in many ways, except for the long stone table that held 3 aged Shapers, papers and open books piled high in front of them. Ah, Lazus, nice to see you again. Spoke up the woman in the center, Eret Plamen. Plamen, a pleasure as always. Try his might, his tone came out wry and tired. He'd never done well speaking to authority. Probably the reason he remained in the middle ranks. You may speak freely here, Lazus. The cult has moved decisively to ensure that every post in this place is held by our people. Granin was impressed. That must have meant calling in a lot of favors. Of course it did, but the leadership of the cult has determined that the time has come for bold action. Broke in the surly voice of the wizened Shaper to Plamen's left. What we don't need right now is unnecessary tension with the blasted warriors circle. What were you thinking? Damn ant. I think you'll find that it wasn't my idea to provoke or attack the warrior leader of the Delve, Gravis. The specimen we acquired made that decision all on its own. Oradine Gravis, so old his true skin had begun to crumble, waved a hand dismissively. It sounds like this creature is more trouble than it's worth. He declared. We should feed it to one of our more promising specimens and be done with it. No need to be hasty, soothed the third member of the triad. From the intelligence we received, the creature was quite promising, also a reborn soul. Not something we should so casually toss aside. The youngest member of the triad and usually the most reasonable, Biratite Chrysalis attempted to play peacemaker. A role she was well suited to. Gravis huffed. Those damned lizards wouldn't know a good stone if we threw it up their nostrils. Tell me, Lazus, how do you think the creature holds up? Granin visibly hesitated and Plamen broke in to ease his mind. Do not worry over much, Shaper Lazus, the fate of the creature you captured will not rest on your words alone. We will follow the process as best we can in these trying times. It will receive an interview and assessment before this triad will make a decision. Somewhat mollified, Granin gave his honest thoughts. The creature is difficult, cagey, untrusting and holds back information regularly. Much of this can be attributed to the sudden and violent manner of capture which bypassed all the normal protocols. A loud harumph erupted from Gravis. It was he who had authorized this mission and its conditions. Nevertheless, I found the monster to be surprisingly capable. It's certainly not afraid to cause a stir, has a huge variety of mutations and skills, even a high level of core shaping which it has used to grow two quite formidable pets. Pets. A waste of resources, surely. Shaper Gravis. As the first of this triad, I will order you to hold your tongue if you continue to interrupt. Plasmin had run out of patience. As I was saying, pets, two of them, although one has gone missing and we are unable to determine where it went. The creature itself refuses to say a word on the matter. Hardly relevant if it failed to get through the gate, Plasmin spoke dismissively. Quite so, Granin agreed. I merely raise the pets to indicate the wide variety of capabilities the creature has. The magical skills it has demonstrated are quite well developed, and I'm aware that it has invested heavily in raising its abilities in this area. I discovered through dialogue it actually has multiple brains. Wouldn't utilizing the relevant skill be more efficient? Asked Chrysalis, baffled. It would, but it has had no awareness of the skill until I asked the same question. It sounds like this monster has a range of curious abilities. I'll be curious to see how it performs in the upcoming trials. Trials. What exactly is being planned here, Plasmin? The cult has decided that our time is running out. A new ancient must arise soon if we to fulfill our destiny and reach beyond the confines of this world. What? Isn't that a little sudden? We believe this to be true. All of our candidates will be put to the test. We must have a final specimen behind which we can throw all our strength. And the rest. Fuel for the fire. Chapter 346 Locked Up. Not sure what I expected really. Did I think I would be confined? Yes, obviously yes. You can't just capture a monster and then let it wander around willy-nilly. A few questions are bound to be raised. Why the hell do you have a monster walking around? Please kill it until it's dead, for example. Particularly if you're going to be supporting and strengthening said monster. I can't imagine most of these stone people are likely to be big fans of the endeavor. The whole, monsters versus everyone else, dynamic has been fairly well established by my experiences up to this point. For whatever reason these crazy nutters want to make a new big bad monster to go to the center of the world and hang out with the other 19 ancients. I'm not keen on the idea. I want to support my family and help to develop the greatest empire of ant monsters that ever existed. Other than that, I want to sleep a lot. It's not too much to ask, is it? I suppose there are other things I'd like to do. I wouldn't mind meeting up with another reincarnated human such as myself. One that isn't completely nuts, that is. Garalosh wasn't what I would describe as particularly stable by the time I met her. Although you could make an argument she wasn't too well held together when she was a human. Yikes. It'd be nice to be able to chew the fat with someone who's had similar experiences is all I'm saying. I mean, they're unlikely to be an ant, so that sucks for them, but just because they aren't a member of the greatest species doesn't mean we couldn't get along and have a good chat. How's the dungeon been treating you? Which biomass flavor is favorite? How much do centipedes suck? That sort of thing. I'm kind of hopeful they might have one here in this compound. From what I gathered, there's a few monsters tucked away here. Specimens, as that stone man would put it. Since they study individuals like me when they come across us, there's a chance one is kicking around nearby. Maybe I should try and reach out with mind magic. No, shouldn't risk it. The people around here seem strong at mind magic and not afraid to use it in nasty ways, something the Sophist never did since they probably never felt threatened by me. After meeting a sortie of stone folk who were friendly and dressed in robes that were tied around their waists, what is it with these people and being bare-chested? Why the shirt hate? I was promptly surrounded and escorted with all haste toward their compound. The outpost was basically a fortress carved into the wall of an open section of tunnel, hardly small enough to be called a measly outpost. Before I had too much time to take in the sights, I was bundled into a downward-leading tunnel and shoved into what is essentially a cell. Don't get me wrong, it's quite a nice cell. Not on the level of what the Sophist provided for their pets, that was practically a day spa for monsters, but it's not bad. A little bit of space to move around in, even for me, some food and water provided, a cozy spot of soft materials to snooze on. No windows whatsoever and obviously hardened walls to repel physical attacks. Above me on walkways that looked down into my cell, 3 shapers stood still as the stone that made up their skin and watched me carefully at all times. No privacy. Good thing I don't need to use a toilet or shower. I'd be embarrassed. I have to say, it even makes me nervous to sleep. I've no doubt that. All three of them are powerful mind mages, capable of launching fearsome strikes to knock me out if I'm doing something dodgy. I've actually attempted to speak with them a few times, but I haven't gotten any reply. They rebuff my mind bridges and fray them before I can connect. So, there isn't a lot to do, basically. If they want to win me over to their side and get me to work for their ultimate goal of raising another ancient, they need to make a bit more effort. I'm sure they will eventually. I suppose I just need to rest until they're good and ready. I did consider running away, a few times in fact. The thought of carrying Granin away as a hostage had been sorely tempting, but ultimately I thought going along with the Golgari Shapers had been the safer bet. I have no idea where I am, or how to get back home, or how many hunters would chase me or anything about the situation at all. From the moment they caught me in the expanse, I've been in their power. I can only hope Chrysalis is able to complete her mission, and perhaps then some help might be able to find me. I can't feel anything from the colony at this moment, none of their energy is reaching me, so I know they're some distance away. Either I manage to convince the Golgari to let me go, which I don't feel is likely, or I prove to them that I'm useful in fulfilling their grand mission. The only other option is escape, and I'm not certain I'll be able to survive that. This sucks. If only I'd stuck with the colony and helped them expand, I wouldn't be in this stupid mess. Yet another instance where avoiding my responsibilities has come back to bite me right in the profit margin. You'd think an ant would learn. Faintly I can hear the sound of stone shifting above me, and a few moments later 3 new shapers enter with their rocky chests on display to look down at me. As an insect can, I stare back at them without shifting my head an inch, remaining perfectly still. If it unnerves them at all, they give no visible reaction, only watching me silently. It's hard to tell, but I believe the 3 newcomers are older than the other 3. Something about how brittle their outer skin is, or is it perhaps a little pale and ossified? Regardless, they feel like authority figures. Something might be happening here. Sure enough, after some waiting, a mind bridge is formed and extended out to me. With nothing else to do, my mana senses are fully attuned, and for this reason I'm able to detect something strange about the way this bridge is formed. I don't think it's malicious in any way, but I feel as if it is woven between all 3 of them, and by all 3 of them at the same time. Is this the method that Granin and his team used to attack me? We extend a greeting to you, Reborn soul. We apologize for the abrupt manner of bringing you to us, but circumstances have pressed us into desperate measures. The 3 of them stare down at me like hawks. The words are friendly, but the eyes certainly aren't. Nice to meet you folks. Gosh darn, I really hope I can be an ancient one day. Got him. Chapter 347. Honesty is refreshing. They seem to be the bigwigs around here, unless I miss my guess. These 3 radiate that sort of aura. Although I can't say I approve of the way they are looking down on me like I'm some sort of roach who they might want to squish. I'm a much more valuable sort of insect than that, thank you very much. The ant is far more noble, far more dignified than any runt that hides under your fridge. Their cold and calculating eyes don't fill me with warm feelings. Something tells me that this conversation isn't going to be one of my all-time favorites. Because I'm certain they're here to chat. They need to evaluate the merchandise after all. Otherwise, how could they make a sound judgment as to its value? These nutters only care about one thing, which is making a monster as powerful as possible and launching it at the center of the dungeon in the hopes that it breaks through all in its way to ascend to the most powerful tier of monster that apparently exists. As much as I enjoy a good cannon, I'm not convinced that I want to be a cannonball. I'll have to wait and see how much of a choice they give me. I don't think I can break out of this place, so only rescue or following their instructions is left to me at this point. I can't help but curse my poor decisions that led to this outcome. Maybe if I'd been more vicious and fought to kill from the beginning, then I would have escaped, made it back to my colony and been safe there. But no, peaceful Anthony wanted to slip away without causing enmity. Well, where did that get me? Clutched in the palm of these cultists. Patience, Anthony. No need to fly off the handle. Need to make a good impression on these fogies so they don't immediately knock me out and feed my precious biomass to some hyena they've had locked up here for the last 100 years. Your enthusiasm at the prospect of achieving the dream of our fellowship is certainly inspiring, came the dry tones of who I presume to be the leader of these 3, the woman in the center, but you must understand that we can't take your dedication at face value. A more solid contribution is required to demonstrate your sincerity. But I'm so sincere. Off the scale even. I want to be an ancient so bad, I already defeated a candidate out of sheer jealousy. Anthony, you're smoother than a greased snail. This couldn't be going better. We've heard of your triumph over the beast known as Garalosh. I must ask, Were you not perturbed to destroy another of your own kind? Oh, tricky question. Don't want to seem too bloodthirsty, also don't want to appear too peaceful. If I explain that she threatened my family, then I may be pressured to explain why I would step up to the plate for a colony of brainless ants. The less time spent discussing the colony, the better. I get the feeling that the attitude Grannon displayed toward my family would be a heck of a lot less flippant if he realized what I'd done to make them more intelligent. The last thing I want to do is unleash some sort of crusade against my family. Garalosh threatened me directly and traveled a long way to hunt me down. I refused to hide from her forever. I don't relish the fact I had to take her down, but I also don't regret it. She forced the issue onto me when she could have left well enough alone. You don't take responsibility for your actions. I didn't say that. These people are tricky. I said I have no regrets with my choices. Interesting. The three of them stare down at me for a moment, possibly consulting amongst themselves as I sweat internally. What exactly do these people want from me? If I knew that, then I'd have a much better idea of how to answer them. Monster. A different voice this time, gruff and full of ire. What do you believe makes the most powerful creature? An odd question. I mean, how would I know? I have my own ideas, of course, but I can't say with any kind of certainty that they'd be the best possible ways. Why are you asking me, buddy? You're the one with hundreds of years of monster rearing knowledge at your beck and call. Maybe that's the point. He wants me to admit that they have the knowledge and expertise that I don't. An interesting play. The shaper in question is almost glaring down at me, so intense is his stare. What did I do to get you so worked up, old man? Shouldn't I be the one who's annoyed? I don't know. I answer honestly. How could I? I've been a monster for under a year, and before that I spent less than 15 years as a human. I didn't know I could get mutations until I upgraded my first body segment to +5. I didn't know how cores worked until I had one. I didn't know how reconstitution of cores worked until I tried it. Outside of some information and tips I picked up along the way, I've been flying blind ever since I was reborn here. Interesting that you admit it so readily. Does that mean you would be willing to submit to our guidance? Happy to take advice. You guys have a lot of information to draw on, obviously. The shaper frowned. I did not mean advice. I mean that you would exclusively develop along the lines that we prescribed for you. Ah, I see. Heck no. I refuse firmly. He seems a little taken aback by my abrupt refusal and stares hard at me. Care to elaborate on why? The first speaker comes back into the conversation, filling the gap left by her associate. It's my life, my body, and I'm the one who'll make decisions regarding my own future. Didn't the original ancients develop that same way? We don't know how they developed. They grew to power in a time before the dungeon had breached the surface of this world. She sounds thoughtful as she considers my words. I won't say that your argument is without merit. I can tell that angry man wants to interrupt then, and maybe he does on a more private line. Regardless, a few moments later I hear the leader's voice again. I would like to explain to you what is going to happen here going forward. Hit me. My body is ready. Chapter 348, Chapter 461. Too much honesty is maybe not so great. I'm a little nervous. What's the story going to be? No matter what, I don't think it's going to be something I like. Don't keep me in suspense, let me hear the damage. Just how bad are things going to be? The three guards remain perfectly still during this time, watchful and poised. They don't miss a single movement I make. The three older shapers are a little more mobile, but not much. I get the feeling that these Golgari are a little more attached to stone than just having different varieties of it for skin. They are unusually still when they don't have to be moving, as if becoming a rock themselves. You know the purpose of our cult. Absolutely. You desire for a 20th ancient to take its place amongst the other 19. Something about closing the circle, or some such. She nods her head in agreement. That is correct. We seek to empower a monster in order that it may come to dominate the lower strata and achieve a tier of evolution on par with the existing ancients. I'm a little surprised to hear that. Do you actually know what tier the ancients are? The theoretical maximum tier. I wonder how high it is. 10, 20. No, we don't. Dang. To our knowledge, there have been only 2 conversations between the sapient races of the surface and the ancients. During the cataclysm we now refer to as the time of rending, the mana level in the dungeon rose to unprecedented heights. When the tunnels connected to the surface, mana from the center of Pangera flooded the skies, followed a tidal wave of monsters that nearly washed away any remnant of civilization on this world. Yikes. Sounds pretty bad. How long ago was this? More than 2,000 years ago. When the mana reached its peak, the ancients themselves were able to come to the surface for a time, devastating all that they found. Tales of the destruction they wrought are legend to this day. Scholars debate the history of these events, for not much that was written during that time survives today, but we do not believe the ancients sought to particularly destroy the surface world. In our cult we are told that they devoured monsters more readily than they did us. Well, why not? That's how monsters get stronger after all. The ancients cannot evolve, nor can they level up. This we believe to be true. So why consume so much? Could it be that they sought to help rather than hinder? Giant monsters turn up and eat everything, and these people think they were trying to be helpful. Crazy talk. Sure. I lamely agree. During this time, two conversations took place. The one you spoke to before spoke of the red truth. This is the name given to the knowledge that was passed on from a dialogue between a powerful Karmado wizard and Arcanidum, who rose under their lands. For us, it was Yaram, the eternal worm. A shaper by the name of Iran Stelix communed with the great worm before founding the cult of the worm in secret. So, what did they say? The ancients, I mean. All three of them snapped their attention to me. That we will not share. The words are sharp, cutting. Sure. No need to get stressed. They relax about 0.5%. Those who do not share our goals are not able to receive the words of the ancients. It is a sacred mission. Of course it is. You just gotta love them ancients. Worms. The whole lot of them. Great stuff. I think that works. There was a brief pause in the dialogue. I presume the three of them were discussing my incredible, sincere and fervent love of the ancients and worms. For my part, I continue to remain perfectly still whilst I watch them. No need to give anything away. Did you notice anything odd about the last wave? A new voice breaks into the conversation, younger, a little more light than the others. How could I? It was the first wave I'd ever experienced. I don't have a point of reference for that. The wave was immensely dangerous to us at first, but eventually turned into a boon for the colony, enabling us to harvest experience and biomass at an unprecedented speed. By the end of it, I'd started hoping it might stick around. The solid defenses we encountered on the way down to the second strata gave me pause though. There may have been more going on beneath us than I had assumed. We thought that might be the case. Compared to other recent waves, this was much longer and more intense. The mana levels in the upper strata rose beyond what we would expect, by far, and the duration of the wave was much longer. Even now, the mana has yet to return to what we would consider normal levels. I had noticed that. I can't help but muse. It started to rise not long after I was born in the dungeon, and it's never gone back to the level 1 experienced then. I can't say I never wondered why that might be the case. There is another brief pause as they confer. Indeed, the cult of the worm has decided that it is likely another cataclysm is coming. We never experienced the build up to the time of rending, since, at that time the dungeon had not breached the surface and was unknown. We believe that the waves will start to build, as if from an ocean, each one greater than the last and receding a shorter distance until the next arrives, until the mana will crash over the surface of Pangera, perhaps for the last time. Why the heck would it be for the last time? You have no reason to think that. Or perhaps they do, or perhaps they want me to think they do. Sneaky. That's interesting. I try to stay focused. For us, as well as those who follow the red truth, this has precipitated a call to action. The time for the final ancient to ascend is running short. We can no longer divide our efforts and resources in a dozen different directions, hoping that one of our candidates will achieve the final ascension. This approach has failed so far, and there is no reason to believe it will serve for the final push. Instead, we are taking a different approach. Oh, I'm not sure I like the sound of this. We have gathered all of the monsters we are currently supporting here in this place. Although it is crude, the cult has decided that the best way to determine the most worthy monster is through a trial by combat. Sue, you want us to duel for the right to be sponsored by you guys. What if we lose? Naturally, those monsters who lose will become fuel to speed the growth of the more deserving monster who wins. That's cold. I'm a sapient creature, you know. You want me to fight to the death like a slave. We understand your past, but it isn't your present. Time is short and we have been driven to these barbaric methods. We don't like it, but we have no choice. You think you have no choice, but you don't know for sure. By the by, I think that guy is perfectly happy at this turn of events. He's looking at me as if I'm a juicy steak for his favorite dog. Chapter 349 The Legionaries' Tales. The Legion headquarters in the independent underground city-state of Rilla was a place that Morelia had never been. This deep into the first strata, on the very border between the layers, was a dangerous place only the very powerful would tread in small numbers. Her own small mercenary team had certainly never delved this low, choosing to hone their skills in those expanse that they could reach. Compared to her own small team and their desperate struggles to hunt and descend the dungeon as best they could, the extravagance of power and wealth on display in Rilla made her sigh with irritation. All that time she'd spent battering away on her own, trying to struggle without relying on anyone, the Legion had a fully functioning fortress down here to muster and launch delves from. It was connected via a functioning gateway to boot. Even this was only a small part of the large and vibrant city that lay spread out beneath her. She had to ask herself if she'd wasted all that time for nothing. Running away from the Legion when her brother had died, had it been the right choice? She'd been so confused, consumed with grief and unable to believe that her brother, always so capable and strong, so personable and careful, could have failed and died. Her father's face when he'd told her had been pale and his voice had quavered ever so slightly, the only sign of weakness she had ever seen from him. Perhaps that, more than anything, had shaken her. She wasn't afraid to die fighting the dungeon, she risked death every time she set foot beneath the ground, but it was crushing to see and feel what that death would mean to those left behind. It's amazing, isn't it? Morelia started at the unexpected voice. Somehow Titus had managed to sneak up on her as she was thinking. She cursed under her breath. How did a man that large move so soundlessly? Just what sort of skills was he training? She turned as the familiar figure of the commander walked beside her and leaned on the stone rampart that lined the outer wall of the fortress, overlooking the city. The first time I came here, I couldn't believe that such a thing was possible. So many different people, coming together to form a city in the dungeon of all places. Titus shook his head at the memory. That it was so prosperous, so safe. I didn't understand it. Of course, I went on to learn that many such places exist in Pangera. Many of them much larger and more grand than Rilla. How deep are they? Morelia asked, taking her father by surprise. The cities. Depends on which ones you mean. Most of the time, the depth depends on the people who founded it. Independent cities like this one are usually in the first and second layer. There's one in the third that I know of. I haven't been there myself, but I know the Legion has a presence in that area. Really? The third? Morelia was surprised. The third layer was supposed to be an inhospitable place of fire and ash, hardly the sort of place you would expect to see anyone living. Wait a second, she considered for a moment, does that mean that there are cities even deeper? Non-independent ones. Titus smiled down at his daughter. Just talking about the depths of the dungeon had her eyes afire with the thirst for battle and adventure. He couldn't help but reminisce about his own youth, he'd been much the same, hungry to push further, to delve more, level up and overcome all challenges. That fire had driven him deep, as far as any human had been, alongside his brothers and sisters of the Legion. He'd wanted to experience it all again with both of his children. The death of his eldest son had been a savage blow, but there was a chance that Morelia might come back around. He resisted the temptation to push her to join once more. He knew her mentality, it was far too close to his own. Pushing her hard would only make her run away. She was stubborn as a brick baked out of a stone that was formed in the core of another brick. The dungeon has many secrets to reveal. There are great cities in the 4th and 5th strata. There's an entire empire that exists in the 5th strata. On flying islands. How the heck do you have flying islands under the ground? Morelia was flabbergasted. Ha! The commander barked out one pure laugh before he reined himself in. He snuck a quick glance at the ramparts around them to ensure he hadn't been seen. It wouldn't do for his reputation to crumble because he was caught laughing. He looked back toward Morelia as she stared at him, disbelieving. Nobody ever believes me about the islands, he chuckled. Morelia's head was spinning. Information of the deep dungeon was so rare in Lyria, these sorts of topics were just not discussed. Anyone who had this information kept it to themselves and used it for the benefit of their own organization. Even the Legion wouldn't share it with mere recruits. It was beyond strange that Titus would be so talkative about the dungeon. He'd been close-lipped about it since she was an infant. No matter how much she'd begged, he wouldn't say a word. Her eyes narrowed a little. What are you scheming, old man? Titus. Eyes opened wide innocently. Who? Me? You accuse me of scheming. Morelia sighed. I know what you're doing. Do you really want me to join the Legion again that badly? Appealing to my sense of adventure. The eyes of the commander glittered. I do, he readily admitted it. Now that it was in the open, he wouldn't step down. Not only for me, but for your mother as well. It's not easy for us to have a life separate from our children. We wanted to share it with you, but we didn't choose to force you. Instead, we were delighted when both you and your brother leapt headlong into the Legion. What happened was a tragedy, but what made it worse was that you leaving made it feel as if I'd lost both of my children instead of one. These were dangerous topics, things they'd not spoken about, ever. Emotion surged inside Morelia, things that she'd suppressed for years came rushing to the surface. And can you tell me now, what happened? I know you were there. I know that you know. Do you know how hard it's been, not being sure how your own family died? He died during the delve. That was the official word of the Legion. You have reason to doubt it. Titus demurred. It was painful for him. So painful he felt as if his chest were being torn out, but he didn't let any of it show on his face. Of course I doubt it. Do you really think he would have failed in the first strata? He was far too strong. And you were there. How could he die? How could any of them have died? This was the reason why Morelia had left the Legion and fled from her father. She simply couldn't believe what she had been told about her brother's death. It just didn't seem possible. It didn't even seem plausible. Titus took a deep breath and blew out the air in his lungs. He could see the pain in his child's eyes and it tested him like never before. No matter how hard it was, he had always shouldered the burden and done his duty. No matter what it cost him, he would follow through. He could only hope that his daughter was strong enough. If you want to know, he spoke slowly and Morelia hung on his every word, then you must rejoin the Legion. She stared at him with a cold intensity that crackled in the air. This was the first time Titus had deviated from the official line, even in the slightest. It was the only concession she would receive and it was confirmation that she hadn't been told the entire truth. This was it. She would have the answers she had sought for so long if she signed back up. She turned to face her father squarely and snapped a Legion salute, fist to her heart. Reporting for duty, Commander. Titus nodded and returned her gesture. Welcome back, Cadet. Chapter 350 Morelia Awakens. The agonizing pain had long faded, leaving in its wake a vast lassitude, as if every cell in her body had been ripped apart and now had to pull itself back together. She felt tired on a level that she hadn't known existed. Beyond her bones and down into the deepest recesses of her marrow, she felt exhausted. The spark of stubbornness in her mind refused to allow her to sink into unconsciousness, and though it was the hardest thing that she had ever done, she forced her eyes open. She still lay in the stone basin, the hard stone unyielding beneath her. Above her the dull light of the enchanted stone was slowly fading, pitching the space into twilight. Morelia grimaced hard and stretched out her hands. Her body screamed at her not to move, every muscle aching, but she wouldn't listen. With the gradual movement of an invalid, she pulled herself upright and supported her weight against the wall. Below her, the final drops of concentrated mana were draining away, falling beneath, doubtlessly to be recycled and used again to torment the next trainee to qualify for this hellish process. She took a deep breath and slowly turned around, her bare feet shuffling against the stone. When she finally managed to set her feet and took a moment to steady herself, she looked up to find her father looking at her, a rare show of emotion showing on his face. Pride radiated from eyes but also great sorrow, and she knew that he was mourning his son all over again in this moment. Congratulations, Legionary. Titus' voice was rough and tired as she was. Morelia swore she could see moisture in his eyes. Morelia could barely find the energy to smile, but she did. Thank you, Commander, she said. She couldn't remember what happened next. Later Titus would tell her that she'd passed out on the spot. He'd had to leap forward to stop her from smacking her stubborn head against the rock. When she awoke she was in a small room, on a hard bed. As she groggily took the room in, she realized the furniture was austere, basic. The bed was large enough, but hard, unyielding, and the walls were unadorned, bare, except for one thing. On a simple steel hook hung the black leathers of a full legionary uniform, and the moment she saw it she cried. When she gathered herself and put it on, she left her chamber to find her father leaning against the wall in the corridor. Come with me, he said. The two of them traveled in silence through the fortress, neither willing to break the companionable silence that had broken out between them. Both of their lives had changed the moment she had opened her eyes. It was hard for Morelia to grasp that she had achieved the dream she'd had since she was a child, the dream she'd shared with her brother. She wasn't sure how to feel, or what to say. Likewise, her father didn't trust himself to speak. His chest was full of emotions and he was afraid that if he opened his mouth he'd no longer be able to keep them contained, so he remained silent. Through the twisted corridors they walked, past soldiers standing silent and tall on sentry duty, and auxiliaries working hard to fulfill the thousands of tasks that the fortress needed to keep itself running, until finally they came to an inscribed wall covered in carved script. She threw a confused glance at her father and he dropped his chin to his broad chest, his eyes hooded. Go and talk to your brother, he instructed. Morelia felt her heart beat faster at this command and turned back to the wall, covered in neat rows of names. She stepped closer, her eyes trailing through the list, searching for one that was familiar. The closer she came to the end, the more she began to recognize seniors who had gone delving when she was still a trainee, even some in the year directly above her. Finally she found what she was looking for. Romanus Marius. She raised one hand and let her calloused fingers trail through the grooves that made her brother's name. Even now, years later, she felt as if she could never forget his face, his voice. He'd been such a presence, able to lift others up and make them want to be the best version of themselves. He'd been charismatic, charming, somebody people wanted to follow, everything that she wasn't. She'd hated him for that, even as she'd admired him. He would just laugh at her. More, you're being ridiculous, he would smile and say, don't you think there are things that you can do better than me? She remembered staring at him, dumbfounded. Romanus was perfect. What could she possibly do better than him? He must have read her expression, because he shook his head, stepped forward and placed a hand on the top of her head. Trust me, more. By the time you're done, I'll be looking up to you. Lost in her memories, she didn't hear her father step up behind her, his feet slow and heavy. This wall, he stated, carries the names of all of those trainees who didn't survive the baptism. Shock and indignation filled Morelia at this and her head flew up to stare at her father. Titus met her gaze and slowly shook his head. Of course he wouldn't lie to her. Nobody could believe it. He had passed every trial, every test, every measurement with flying colors. He was so far above the minimum levels, he was practically assured to succeed. Your mother was devastated, I was lost. We just didn't imagine that it would happen to him. Morelia still refused to believe it. It's not possible. How could I have succeeded where he failed? You can't possibly explain that. There was sorrow in Titus' eyes as he looked down at his daughter. He raised his arms and embraced her as he hadn't done in years. I don't know why he failed. I just don't know. I wish I had an explanation, but even now I have no words. No matter how I searched, I haven't found anything to explain what happened. But this is something you need to understand, and something Romanus tried to tell you many times. He believed it, and I always believed it as well. You will be stronger than he was. One day, you'll be stronger than me. Despite her father's words, Morelia refused to believe it, but her voice had been stolen away, so she couldn't say anything. Instead she tried to digest the truth that she had tried to find. For so long. Despite finally getting the answers she had wanted, all she was left with was bitterness and determination. 2 days later, the Legion prepared to travel through the gate. They would enter the main Legion headquarters, deep below the ground, an impregnable stronghold built during the Cataclysm thousands of years ago. Chapter 351 was dancing to the jailhouse rocks on all sides. These people seriously love their stones. I've made that observation before and I probably will again, but it bears repeating. There is clearly a strong physical and spiritual connection between these, Golgari. Golgaran. Gagarin. Something like that. Any information I can gather on their customs, thoughts, patterns, history, anything at all, could prove useful. Because this situation is desperate. There's no other way to think about it, I'm in trouble here. Fighting to the death against other powerful monsters, creatures that have been groomed for however long. Oh no, Anthony isn't going to let anything slip on this one. My mind is laser focused. It's like a laser beam through a crystal to become a smaller, more focused laser that is then blasted through a person's eye, corrects their vision on the way through, hits the lens and is sharpened even further before melting the brain on the way out. To that end, I've begun doing all I can to suss out my situation. The first key is to act natural. If the guards are suspicious of me, then they'll watch me twice as closely as every other monster, which will make my life difficult. Far better that I appear to be the perfect candidate, cooperative and peaceful. So I've taken some time to engage in typical ant behavior. I spend an inordinate amount of time grooming myself, which I have to admit is a wonderfully soothing use of time anyway. Cleaning the mandibles, picking out all the gross bits of biomass that have gotten stuck in the barbed sections. I actually had to use water magic to get that done, blasting the filth off my magnificent face hands with a concentrated water hose. It made a tremendous mess, of course, even the guards up above got splashed pretty bad. Another 12 guards ran in, yelling and pointing all over the place. It was quite a sight. I presume they were frustrated at the mess, but I managed to use a little fire magic to dry the place out in no time. My display was so effective that another 10 guards came in to admire my work. At least I presume that's what they were doing, seeing as they kept yelling and pointing at the fires. After that incident, my usual number of guards was doubled from 3 to 6, but I don't think it's due to any negative reason. My suspicion is that they want to make sure they catch any other brilliant ideas I have and admire my many talents and capacities. Other than that, cleaning the antennae is always important and requires careful precision, pulling the antennae through the elbow joints on my front legs with the utmost care, using the tiny hairs in the joint to remove dirt and detritus from the sensory organs. Usually ants would clean each other in teams to ensure that each and every member of the colony is spick and span, not bringing bacteria or mold into the nest. Mold can be a real killer to ants, since the nest is usually kept quite warm and damp in order to create the perfect conditions for rearing larvae. Some types of ants even have small glands that secrete an antibacterial that they use to clean themselves. Truly, the ant is the king of the insect world. Apart from cleaning myself, I've been taking care to spread pheromones around my chamber in order to make it smell a little more like a nest. It's a small thing, but it does soothe me to have the familiar scent around me at all times. It didn't take long to accomplish this, so I once again lapsed into boredom. Man, this is tough. Being locked up with nothing to do. It's torture. Even as I thought that, I could feel my sub-brain screaming in protest. Naturally, with all this free time on my hands, I made sure that each of the sub-brains was grinding hard at my magic skills. Each of them is being pushed to the limit every second, to the point that I frequently have 3-pounding headaches. Of course, the main mind needs to be kept focused and clear at all times, ready to respond to moments of crises, so I can't use it to train magic skills. That would be insane. The goal is to grind away at the elemental skills and mana sensing, compression and shaping to bring my all-around levels up and get as close as possible to the unity elemental skill. I need every edge I can get for the upcoming battles. I don't think for 1 second they'll be easy. The only monster I've ever battled that one of these cults supported was Garalosh, and I don't want to say I'd be able to beat her again if you locked us in some weird cage and made us fight it out. That croc was scary. So my sub-brains are on the grind 24/7. I'll work them until they burn into sludge and leak out my ear holes. I hope Tiny is okay. Granon told me he'd take care of him, and I hope I can trust the guy. The other members of his team were getting quite fond of the big lug, so perhaps I can count on them to intervene if their leader doesn't. Whatever happens, I don't want them to bring him in here. If he gets caught up in this stupid tournament business, then I'm not sure if he'd survive. Although, I wonder if they'd let him participate alongside me. He's one of my pets after all, a part of my strength. No. Don't be tempted, he's better off on the outside. I'll have to make my way out of here on my own. After 2 full days have passed since my interview, I feel as if I'm going mad. I took a moment to surreptitiously try to interfere with the walls using earth magic. Since they're made of rock, I presumed they could be interfered with. Naturally, it wasn't that simple. The second I did so, the walls lit up with runes and I felt a force slam into my mind like a battering ram, sending me reeling. By the time my mind stopped spinning, there were 12 guards staring down at me with decidedly angry faces. I can assume they weren't too happy with my supposed escape attempt. I tried to look like the most innocent ant I could, which I think had a solid effect. I fully expected someone to connect a mind bridge and yell at me for a bit, but oddly enough no one did. I'm not sure if this is a good or bad sign. A day later I got my answer. The first sign I had that something was changing was the door to my accommodations grinding open. The door itself was an impressive piece of work, thick and banded with strange, glowing metals that were obviously warded heavily. On the other side of the door 6 robed shapers stared at me with flat, unfriendly eyes as the 6 guards from above lowered a ladder and climbed down to take up a defensive position behind me. Still without speaking with me, they gestured for me to follow them before walking backwards down the tunnel leading from my chamber, eyes on me the entire way. This is looking ominous. Is it round 1 already? Do I have to fight? Are they going to execute me? I need to be careful. I stop my sub-minds from spinning their shapes and give them a few moments to rest. They've been working hard the last few days and need a few moments of rest before I can use them to fight. I'm tempted to use my healing gland, but I know that it has a limited effect on easing mental fatigue. If I was in range of enough members of the colony, this issue would be resolved in just a few minutes, but sadly I can't sense a single ant in my vicinity. Down the tunnel we walk, then a right at a T intersection that brings us to another tunnel which we travel down. Every now and again we pass other doors which I give a cursory swipe with my antennae to try and get a scent of what's on the other side. I sense heat behind a few of them, and behind others I pick up some strange smells. Definitely monsters. These must be the rooms of my fellow candidates. I've passed 6 of them so far, I wonder how many they have locked up here. As I wonder about this, we come to a set of broad gates that rattle as they rise into the ceiling above my head. I have to say, this tunnel is quite spacious, able to fit my bulk into it with room to spare. Clearly this area is designed with monsters in mind. As the gate finishes rising, my escort's back into the open space beyond, gesturing for me to follow. Alright brains, I hope you guys are ready to go. This might be showtime. Inside the space I find an open, circular area of flat ground interspersed with obstacles. Yep, this is clearly a monster coliseum. Looks like it's time to get it on like Donkey Kong. My weary sub-minds begin to pull on my gravitational mana and I begin to condense it with my main mind. I can't risk the weaker minds losing control of the spell, I have to do the heavy lifting myself. As I'm settling into war mode and getting my game mandibles on, I feel a tentative and hesitant mind bridge reach out towards me. Is this a test? The guards are still standing around and watching me. I'm confident it hasn't come from them. Warily I allow the contact to complete and immediately hear a tentative voice echo in my mind. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. Chapter 352 The Monster in the Mirror. Not going to hurt me, That sounds like something someone planning to hurt me might say. Aha, I'm not going to fall for your games. This is most likely to be a sneak attack. Although my escort still hasn't moved away, standing around in me a rough circle facing inwards, I don't imagine that they'd be too interested in staying around in the event another monster came over and started to throw down. Perhaps they aren't lying. I'm not going to attack you. The Shapers wanted me to talk to you. Oh really? If they wanted to talk to me, why wouldn't they just do it themselves? I still can't identify the origin of this mind bridge. I know it's somewhere either inside this circular combat space, or just outside it. I can see other entrances spaced around the outside edge, there's a possibility the individual communicating is beyond one of these. The fact they've been able to disguise their mind bridge indicates that they have a not inconsiderable amount of skill, something to be wary of. I think they mentioned that they thought you would respond better if you spoke to someone like you. Someone like me, an ant. Are you a member of my colony come to rescue me and suffered capture as well? Impossible. How could you know where I was? Are you from a rival colony? Come forth and I shall exterminate you. Wow, you're an ant. They didn't mention that. I wonder why. You aren't disgusting, are you? How offensive. I'm an ant. Of course I'm not disgusting. I'm the most noble and incredible arthropod of them all. Okay, settle down. You're really fiery. This isn't what I expected. Well, don't blame me for being a little tense. I get captured, locked up, told I have to fight in death matches and then marched out here without anyone saying a word. Then someone starts trash talking my species. I mean, how would you react? The distant voice seems to pause for a moment to consider before responding. You know what? I would be pretty mad. I'm sorry. I should have realized the Shapers would give you the silent treatment. They're often like that. I've been here for a long time, so I've kind of gotten used to it. Been here a long time. In what capacity? Who are you exactly? You talk about the Shapers as if you aren't one, which makes me think you're a monster, but you also say you don't intend to hurt me, which doesn't sound like something a monster can guarantee right now, considering the whole, monsters will fight to the death, thing. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about that. Look, I'm going to be straight with you, I'm a monster, like you. More than that, I'm a reincarnated human, from Earth. Like you. Opening square bracket ellipsis closing square bracket. Aren't you excited? I know I was when I finally got a chance to talk to someone else like me. Opening square bracket ellipsis closing square bracket. Don't you have anything to say? Well, first of all, it's a little odd having this conversation when I can't see you. Second, I guess I'm a bit surprised. I really didn't think I'd be able to meet another reincarnated monster so soon. Another one. You already met one. But you're so young. It took me decades. Damn it. Decades. You've really been here for a while then. Yes, I met with one. She wasn't what I would describe as very stable. Ah, the voice sounded sad. Yes, that happens to some of us. To be honest, all of the people like us that I've met have been a little odd from the beginning. Including myself. Indeed, that does seem to be the case. Except me, obviously. My life was pretty normal and I would have to say I'm quite well adjusted. Garalosh was crazy in the coconut though, for real. Feel like stepping out and having this little chat in person. I'd like to clap eyes on this individual. I'm sort of curious to see what sort of monster they happen to be. I also might be able to gauge their strength, just in case their words are a pack of filthy lies and I might have to fight them in the end. In my compound vision, I make sure to pay attention to my escort in order to witness any change in their behavior. For the moment they appear, much as they always have, with a stony demeanor, keeping a watchful eye on my every twitch. Alright then, I'll come out, just give me a second. One of the gateways on the other side of this circular death arena jerks outward. Not a smooth glide, as would happen if people with hands were pushing it open, but a solid jump, as if an elephant had just battered it with its head. A large shadow looms in the slight opening before the door jerks again, opening yet wider. A hulking mass of creature shoves its nose through the door and starts to squeeze through. The head is the first thing I see, obviously. Even though the shape and coloration are quite strange, it's quite clear what type of animal this is. You're a bear. The pointed nose of the monster jerks up at my words, causing our gaze to meet. Oh, you really are an ant. This ant hate is really rubbing my thorax the wrong way. Ant are clearly incredible and amazing. Why the heck would you want to be a stupid bear? The massive bear monster shoulders through the door and ambles out into the open before starting to waddle over toward me. In terms of size, it's significantly larger than I am. Bulging muscles ripple with each forward step of those large forelegs. At my needling, the bear peels its lips back to reveal dripping teeth. I cannot believe I would need to try and convince someone that bears are better than ants. Honestly, what is even with you guys? Why'd you reincarnate as such weird creatures? Hold on there, Smokey. First, ants are for the win. Second, what guys? Third, I kept pet ants, apparently that's enough. The bear steps slow for just a moment before she continues to lumber toward me. Pet ants. Ants. How do you even keep pet ants? Don't knock it until you've tried it. There's a whole community with tons of stuff out there. Lots of stuff on YouTube as well. I had no idea. As to the other guy, there's one more of us here. James. He came in a few years ago. Hang on a second. I feel as if I'm neglecting something. Something about the bear. Who told me about the bear? Was it Enid? No. Someone balder. The sophis. The huge bear steps slow until it's within 20 meters of me before it stops and somewhat comically lowers its back legs to sit up facing me, scratching at its chin with one claw. Sarah. I ask. Hey, how do you know my name? Did you happen to spend any time with the sophis? Little bald skinny guys. Ride around on death worms. I did. Wow. That was so long ago, just after I woke up in the dungeon. They told me it was 50 years ago. Sounds about right. But you're still in the second strata. I thought you'd be way deeper. They seem to think so as well. The big bear hesitates for a moment. Look, let's talk. First, why don't you tell me your name? Chapter 353. So bohemian like me. I have to wonder what the minders are doing whilst Sarah and I engage in a mental conversation. I mean, are they listening in? I suppose it's possible. I can't sense them at all, but I suppose that isn't any sort of guarantee, considering their higher skill levels. Perhaps this is all just part of their research, learning about people like me and our monstrous transformations. I can't afford to care too much about it, since this is such a rare opportunity. Perhaps I've been away from the colony for too long. It's nice to have a conversation with someone who is able to reciprocate my human culture. I've still spent longer as a human than as an ant after all, and the humans I've met here on Pangera have been a bit odd, let's put it that way. Sarah, on the other hand, seems quite normal, all things considered. Despite freely acknowledging being a bit unbalanced, she comes across as well-spoken and measured. I wasn't always this steady, she confides. In the first few years it was rough, as I'm sure you know. After my death on Earth, and being reborn here, it's hard at the start. You know what I mean. You're referring to the terror and existential dread of having to fight for survival in a strange world of death. Exactly that. Yes, I recall. I mean, I was a tiny little ant monster. Just about every monster I saw was able to rip me apart. You started out as a bear. It can't have been that bad. It's odd to think of a bear giving you the stink eye, especially a giant, elephant-sized bear with a distended maw that housed teeth as long as a human forearm, but here we are. Look, Anthony, I didn't start this size. I didn't even start as a fully grown bear. I was a cub. A little harmless bear cub. I'm immediately suspicious. Just a cub A harmless little fuzzy ball of fluff, with the claws, and the fangs. How large were you exactly? Somehow I don't think you were just an average, Earth-sized cub. I might have been a touch larger than normal. Just a touch, huh? It's not like you were a normal-sized ant. How the heck would I have survived if I was a regular-sized ant? Not to mention, I was born outside of my colony. Without its colony, a regular ant will die in a day. As that's so, I wonder why. I will never turn down the chance to educate someone about the glorious world of ants. You need to think of individual ants as cells that make up a larger organism when they work together. One ant is not capable of surviving, it needs its brethren to work together to provide context, decision-making and safety. So, ants are weak? No. Ants are sophisticated social creatures who are mutually dependent on each other. But an ant on its own can't survive. Not the point. You're a bit weird, Anthony. Sarah laughed at me. It had been a long time since I'd heard such a relaxed, earnest laugh. Something about it just helped the tension to unwind a few notches in my non-existent shoulders. It helps a lot that Sarah is such a friendly, sociable person. It's hard to believe that she was deemed nuts enough to have her soul ripped into this planet. I don't know what it is, both you and James have such weird pets. No wonder you both ended up in such odd species when you were born here. Odd. He's not another insect, is he? I will brook no competition for the throne of the greatest insect. What? Oh. No. I won't tell you, I don't want to ruin the surprise. They'll probably bring him out to meet you next time. They tend to be a little precious with us. The Shapers, I mean. That sends my antennae into the air a little. Precious. I've been informed that I'll be fighting to the death against other monsters that they've nurtured. It doesn't seem like they're being all that careful with me. Some might say, just the opposite. Sarah's big bare head slumps to the ground and huffs with irritation, sending a cloud of dust swirling from the wind of it. I know, she sighs, something has gotten right into their heads. They've been so nice to me, you know. I was half insane by the time I made it down to the second strata. I was lonely, blood-crazed and starving. The isolation and constant fighting starts to chip away at your mind, and before you know it you're a screaming loony. If I hadn't gotten picked up by a patrol of Shapers by chance, I don't know what would have happened to me. What happened? I was curious to know. It was quite surprising to me. At the time I was so on edge and ready to fight. The first time they made contact through a mind bridge and tried to talk with me, I went completely mental. I thrashed around, trying to find them, but they just backed off and waited until I calmed down before they tried again. It took them 3 days before I was able to talk back to them, then another 3 before I agreed to meet them. After that I decided to take them up on their offer and came back here with them. They put me up, feed me, converse with me, taught me all sorts of stuff. It's been great. So why the death blender now? Seems like there has been a clear shift in policy. I know, and they just won't talk to me. Sarah huffs, clearly frustrated. I've been told that I won't be part of the selection, but that they still consider me a strong candidate. They won't even tell me if James will be thrown in. He better not. That would be barbaric. Isn't the whole thing barbaric? I mean, I'm in it. Well, yes. Yes it is. Because we are people, not just monsters. They can't do this to us. Even after decades as a monster, Sarah still seems to cling to the idea of herself as being something different. A person, a human, a creature who is valued and has worth. She might have been here being coddled by the Shapers for too long. I've already had to learn the lesson. Monsters are not the same as people. We're spawned from the dungeon, and that makes all the difference. Other than the ancients, the rest of us are just resources to the surface people. In the end we can only count on ourselves. At least I have my family, the colony, that I can lean on. Sarah had nothing. I feel sorry for her, to be honest. She had to lean on the Shapers to stay sane, but they've made her lose her edge at the same time. They absolutely can. I can't break out of here on my own. I've tested a few things already and they are watching me like a damn hawk with binoculars. They can easily force me to fight. Just knock me out, drag me out here and wait for me to wake up. Or not, just leave me here unconscious to be free experience and biomass to their pet favorite. They aren't bad people, Anthony. I shrug my antennae. It doesn't matter to me if they're bad or not, I couldn't care less. My only worry is surviving. Time's up. A new voice broke into our mental communication. Clearly the Shapers had been listening the entire time if they were able to break into our conversation so smoothly. Spying. Just keeping tabs, or were they trying to learn something? The other question, Did Sarah know about it? My guards are already gesturing for me to return back the way I came, the gate opening wide for me to pass through into the tunnel back to my cell. Nice meeting you, Sarah. Hope we get another chance to chat soon. You too, Anthony. Stay safe. Ha, I can't help but bark out a bit of a laugh at that. Stay safe. It's not really up to me now, is it? Chapter 354 The Rock in My Corner. After my odd little meeting with Sarah, I was summarily returned to my room. As the door slams home behind me and the guards take their customary places up above, I have to wonder what the point of it was. What were they hoping I'd get out of it? Were they trying to show me they weren't monsters? How nice and good they are. Bit of a laugh when I'm going to get wheeled out of this room and made to fight to the death at any moment. Did they really think bringing out another reborn human to show me how benevolent and wise they were was going to be enough? Laughable. I will happily ditch the lot of them to get back to the colony. My siblings would welcome me and put me to work for the family in a heartbeat. Mother would slap me on the head for being so foolish as to leave in the first place. Ah, I miss my mother. I was stupid for trying to run away and do my own thing. Who cares if the thoughts and desires of the colony get whispered into my head? Isn't it a good thing? Doesn't that mean I can be more helpful to the colony? Isn't being helpful to the colony what an ant is supposed to do? I hope Tiny and Chrysalis are alright. Perhaps my stupidity would be easier to bear if it weren't for the fact I've dragged my two beloved pets into this situation with me. Tiny needs constant healing to help him survive the poisonous mana that's invaded his body. He needs me more than ever. He's too stupid to survive on his own. If I hadn't been so worried about lowering his fighting prowess, I would have boosted his intelligence ages ago. Now it's too late. And Chrysalis. Poor Chrysalis. Such an innocent little blob of death murder. It was hard to give her such a dangerous task, and I know she'll go at it with all her might. Gah, if only I was stronger, I wouldn't have been caught and put in this stupid position. My rage is building. Rage at the Golgari, but also rage at myself. I sit perfectly still inside my cell and stew. There's a large plate covered in biomass nearby, but I'm in no mood to indulge in it. Instead, my minds are full of visions of myself battling, tunneling, escaping, and getting the heck out of here. Of coming back with the colony and wreaking havoc amongst the Golgari. Twisted dreams of tearing down their cities and plundering their wealth are filling my bead. Is it an overreaction? Maybe. But my heart burns at the injustice. I demand vengeance. I sit and seethe for an hour in perfect stillness. I can even see that the guards are perturbed by my lack of action. They see nothing, not even a twitch of an antenna. It must look as if I'm a statue, something not even living. It's quite nice, the ability of an insect to remain still. Eventually the situation changes though, but not through any action of mine. I hear the sound of the door swinging open in the above area, swiftly followed by shuffling footsteps, as if whoever had entered was dragging their feet. When I felt the mind bridge reach out to me, I felt as if I already knew which voice I was going to hear. How's things, Granin, my man? I hate this. I missed you too, buddy. Damn it all to heck. This whole thing is stupid to begin with. I'm stupid, you're stupid, the cult is stupid. Anything else? Me. You already said that, Granin. It bears repeating. A minute later the ladder lowers down and the large, grunting form of my favorite shaper climbs down into my cell with me, eyed watchfully by the trio of goons up above. I mumble, how's Tiny? Granin fixes me with a steady glare before responding. That ape, he sent each word with a bite at the end, eats enough for 5 monsters the same size. My people can barely keep up with him. Typical. That fat monkey only cares about eating and fighting. If he can't fight, he'll eat twice as much. Let him out to fight every now and again and he'll settle down. He needs some activity to distract him from eating. I might do that. Thanks. No worries, Granin. Look, I've been meaning to mention this for a while now. We Golgari refer to each other with our surnames, not our first names. Only good friends and family use first names. I pretend to be shocked. Why, Granin, what are you saying? Aren't we the best of friends? You know what? Screw you. See what I mean? We have this banter going on. Granin Lazu sat down heavily and ran one tired, stone hand over his face. The poor guy, I can sympathize with him somewhat. But hey, who asked him to knock me out and drag me here? Why don't you just tell me what you're doing here, Granin? I know you didn't come here of your own volition, so the higher-ups sent you for something. What's the scoop? I watched the Shaper release a pained sigh before he communicated again. Yeah, the people running this madhouse have given me the honor of being your sponsor for their upcoming murder fest. Before you ask, let me explain. Normally when we bring a monster in and try to support it, one of the shapers is chosen to be the sponsor. That shaper and by extension the other members of their triad, are responsible for guiding the monster, securing it resources and generally pushing it as far as it can go down the path of evolution. So you're like, my trainer. What am I, a pocket monster? Granin looks at me, confused. I don't have pockets. I'm not even wearing pants. Why is that, by the way? Your entire race just hates clothes. Our skin is made of rocks. Other than covering our genitals, what would we need clothes for? Pockets. The shaper reached down with one hand to indicate the sizable pocket sewn into his garment. You make a good point. So what comes next? Do you ever move? You haven't shifted since I came in here. I'm trying to weird out the guards above us. I assure you, it's working. Look, I want to say, clearly, that I think this whole thing is insane. If I'd known what they were planning to do here, I never would have brought you in. I've spent my adult life in the cult, and although I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan of monsters, I believe the quest to find the next ancient is sacred. What's happening here? This blood sport. It's a betrayal of more than 1,000 years of tradition. I'm actually touched. That's nice to know, Granin. Sincerely. I still don't like you. Ah, you just can't admit I've grown on you. You know what else grows on me? Rock fungus. Where does that grow? Not on the. Yes. Granin nodded. Yikes. Between the two of us a weary sort of silence developed. In Granin I had a sort of kindred spirit. A person who thought this whole thing was stupid and didn't want to involved, yet was forced to participate anyway. Which did beg a question. Why you, Granin? Why were you chosen to take on this role as my sponsor? You clearly don't want it, yet someone felt that you were the man for the job. Is it a punishment of some sort? Pretty much. A wide smile spread across the shaper's face. I don't know what you did, but you managed to annoy the head honchos. They aren't big fans of you, even if you are one of the rare reborn monsters. They don't think you have a snowball's chance in the third strata of surviving against their pet little projects, so rather than waste any resources on you, they put me in, someone they also don't like and don't rate, so that you can fail quickly and get eaten by a more deserving monster. Once that's done, I'll get tossed back into the refuse along with my triad of outcasts. I'm kind of stunned. Don't they realize I'm going to eat them all? Granin grinned. I don't think they have any idea who they're dealing with. Chapter 355 Strategizing. Granin and I discuss a few things before we get down to the nitty-gritty. For the most part one want to learn about his people and what makes them tick. He's a little guarded about some things, but quite forthcoming about others. For instance, he's quite happy to tell me why he's on the outer with his cult and with the shapers in general. Supposedly there's been quite a lot of moving and shaking going on within the cult of the worm lately. Recruitment has picked up over the last 50 years and the cult has risen to a level of prominence that it hasn't enjoyed at any point in its history. This influx of people, ideas and energy was always going to cause friction. Granin fell into the steady and cautious camp, the group who wanted to consolidate their gains and take a measured approach, as they always had in the past. Being cautious is never a bad idea for a cult that isn't supposed to exist in the first place, I suppose. But he found that the ground changed under their feet too quickly, as the reckless moron camp, Granin's words, pushed harder than expected and seized control of the leadership. The stupid idiots are so willing to risk what's been built by painstaking effort in the shadows. Granin moaned to me bitterly. What kills me the most is that it's people like me out in the field, loyal to the cause and dedicated, the bedrock of this cult, that get sent out and sacrificed on poorly thought out and badly researched tasks. The mission to capture you was a perfect example. No proper planning, no backup strategy, no thought of having full control of the delving party. Look how that nearly wound up. A disaster. Back in the day, we'd have observed, made gradual contact, felt out the situation to get a sense of fit. There sure as hell wouldn't have been any warriors involved. Bloody meatheads. A constant refrain in Granin's whining is how much the shapers and warriors don't get along. Tell me a story here, Granin. Why is that your entire society glorifies the warriors and takes a dump on the shapers? Seems odd to me. Magic is both awesome and rad. Things like that gateway are only possible because of magic, so why the hate? I can see Granin consider the implications before he decides to answer me. He's being careful not to give me too much information that I can use against him, but enough that I feel satisfied he's working with me. I'm happy to take the trade, something is much, much better than nothing. It goes back to the cataclysm. He finally relents and answers me. Back then, the mana started to rise to unprecedented levels and every society on the surface experienced a magic revolution. Mages were more powerful than they'd ever been before, or since, and they created miracles in that time that elevated the craft to unprecedented heights. But then came the monsters, I guess. He nodded. Quite right. The dungeon opened up and the world was destroyed. Us Golgari were always a martial people to begin with. Our natural skills and racial bonuses push us in that direction quite naturally. We're large, I'm not even that tall, the biggest of us can get up to 10 feet, heavily built, and our true skin provides us with a strong defense without having to invest in armor, allowing our fighters to focus on weapon skills more than other races. Since the rise of the Shapers was immediately followed by the Rending, the people naturally lay the blame at the Shapers' feet, blaming them for bringing the dungeon upon them, and we've been scorned ever since. But that's stupid. I protest. The mana rose due to the dungeon reaching the surface, not the other way round. Surely they know that. They probably do. Granin shrugs, but they don't care. It fits the narrative they want to believe, that's all that matters. Ever since then the Warriors' Circle has been dominant in Golgari society and the Shapers have been suppressed. I think the Shapers have been pushed to the breaking point lately, which is why the cult was able to bring so many into the fold. It's an interesting situation. I can't help but muse over it. In my mind, the Golgari Empire occupies a vast amount of dungeon territory, no doubt connected by these gates. Without the Shapers, the whole thing would fall into a heap in mere days. Without the gates, the individual cities and outposts would need to travel between each other in order to communicate and share supplies, risking the dungeon for days or weeks at a time to send the simplest message. Impossible, surely. Not to mention, this kind of setup will be perfect for the colony. Satellite colonies, connected by magical gateways, would allow us to cover more ground with less numbers. That'll become critical since we need to ensure we farm the dungeon carefully. Spawn points are closely associated with monster population. If we strip the tunnels bare of monsters in our greed, then the spawn points will dry up, leading to less monsters overall and a dramatic reduction in the XP intake of the colony. We have to be smart about it, farm the right amount, not too much, not too little. To make this successful, we need to cover more territory. How to cover more territory without clearing out the dungeon? Gates. Gah, my heart is on fire. If I can learn the secret of these gates, then the colony will have a limitless future. I must uncover the secret. So Granin, tell me how the gates work. No way. Damn it. Look, I don't know why you'd even want to learn about that. Who are you going to use it with? Besides, we've spent enough time on these side issues. We need to get focused on how to prep you for your first fight. Fine, I'll wait, but don't you dare think I won't keep working on this. So, do you mind if I take a quick peek at your core? No way. I had a feeling that might be the case. Granin brings a hand up to rub his stony temple again. Poor guy must deal with a lot of headaches. As if I'm going to let him use a core manipulation skill on me. He'd be mad to think I'd agree. So we have to do this the old-fashioned way, he grumbles. Can you tell me what the focus of your build is? Build what? You're kidding, right? Your build, your skills and stuff. Oh, you mean like, what am I aiming for with my stats and stuff? Right. What's your focus? Where are you putting in the most effort? Yeah, I'm a bit of an all-rounder, I suppose. I mean, it's better not to have something you can't do, right? Cover all the bases, so to speak. Oh, Granin's rubbing his temples again. Oh boy. Look, usually, it's way better to have a general focus for your build, a specific set of skills and mutations that you stack up to become as strong as possible, then you flavor around the edges. It's about building synergy. You know what synergy is? A conjunction or opposition? No, that's syzygy. Then no. It's when things work together to produce an effect more powerful than the sum of its parts. Like, imagine a lightning monster, right? It develops a lightning mana gland which gives it access to free, pre-made lightning mana. Then it takes a teeth mutation that lowers lightning resistance. So when it bites something, its lightning becomes more effective. It's a basic example, but that's synergy. I think I get it. Right, and that's only a basic example. The same things can be done with skills. There are skills that support other skills, as well as skills that can work together with mutations. For example, think about that bite mutation we had. You could take the skill Curse Infliction, which would make you better able to apply a curse through your bite, lowering the resistances further. Most people don't know that it works with bite mutations. It took the cult ages to work it out. Then you could take a toxin mutation which applies a toxin which lowers lightning resistance applied through the bite, Then take the Toxin Mastery skill, which allows you to better inject toxins. With a single bite you can slash one elemental resistance by as much as 30%, even at low levels. That sounds really impressive actually. This is good stuff. The Sophists were never so explicit when explaining these sorts of concepts. Their focus was mainly on the techniques and mastery of manipulating cores. I think they just assumed I would know about maximizing gains from appropriate builds. I've been so blind. Teach me more, Master. Oh, so now you're impressed. We've been studying this stuff for over 1,000 years. This is just the beginning. The unfortunate thing is, we have hardly any research on ant-type monsters. I went to the archive this morning and had a look. Pretty much blank. What? That's morally wrong. Discrimination. Well, ants are considered a huge menace in the dungeon, which can get rapidly out of control, so they pretty much get exterminated whenever they're found. Keeping a queen captive is probably too much of a risk, and keeping an individual worker isn't worth the effort, so you can understand why we never bothered. I suppose so. Please don't exterminate my family. But that's fine. Other insect types have been researched to death. I've got full lists of skills and mutations for most of your body types, so let's work through this. Okay then. Chapter 356, Putting the Ducks in a Row. Granin Lazuz looked around the room with thinly veiled contempt. He didn't recognize most of the cult members who were present. The new blood had flooded this outpost, filling it to the brim until the entire place stank of impatience, ignorance and disregard for tried and tested methods. All these Golgari, some of them with their true skin barely set, looked so excited to be there. Huddled together in their triads, their excited whispered filled the room. Boss, how's our man looking? Ready to go. The insistent whisper of Corinium, second of Granin's triad, probably drew more attention to them than talking in a regular voice would have done. The sibilant hiss cut through the hubbub around them and drew more than a few curious eyes. Granin just shrugged at them and tried to insinuate through gestures that his second was suffering from a mental ailment and his medication had run out. Boss. Hey, boss. Like being prodded directly in the ear with a knife, the hissing voice seemed to stab directly into his brain. Damn it, Neum. Shut up, would you? Granin bellowed. All sound in the chamber cut off as everyone turned to look at the cause of the disturbance. All they saw was a fuming Granin, a very slightly abashed Corin, and Torina Loksham, third of the triad, trying to shrink out of sight. Far from wanting to hide, Granin openly glared back at everyone who met his eyes until he was satisfied they had registered his anger. Gradually the sound picked up again as the various groups resumed their chatter, only then did he turn back to his second. Your damned stage whisper is the least effective possible way of hiding what you want to talk about. Just speak like a normal person. Sorry, boss. I'm just worried. The cult has never done anything like this before, have they? They haven't. Torina broke in quietly from the side, at least according to all the records that I can access. That's what I'm saying. Is Anthony going to be alright? How's he feeling? I can't imagine he's in a good place right now. He did look genuinely concerned, and Granin couldn't help but wonder again at how quickly the cursed insect had managed to win over the members of his triad. His own conversations with the creature were irritating more than anything else. He's fine, he grunted. I wouldn't say that he's happy about the situation. Far from it. But he's managed to wrap his head around what's going to happen to him. Did you find time to talk to him about strategy? About his build? What sort of skills are we working with? Torina asked, her voice quiet but intense. Granin snorted. First off, he wouldn't let me look at his core. Damned ingrate. The other two members of the triad shared a glance. I'm not too surprised by that, Corin said slowly. What's that supposed to mean? Granin huffed. Well, you haven't exactly endeared yourself to him. You have to admit, your demeanor is less than friendly at the best of times, and towards Anthony you've been particularly cold. Torina nodded in agreement, which soured Granin's mood. I haven't been that bad, he protested. Then he reflected. Have I? He wondered, sounding far less convinced than a moment ago. The two younger shapers shared another look which seemed to confirm the mounting suspicion that he'd treated the newest member of the cult's menagerie worse than he should have. Look, I did manage to talk to him a fair bit. He was cagey, and there was a lot he didn't want to share, but we managed to find a few things that he can work on before this circus gets started. We three know that he's got a lot more going on under the hood than people expect. He's going to shock some of these morons, I have no doubt about that. Corin smiled and nodded. This was what he wanted to hear. Do you think he's got a chance of winning this thing? That's his only way of getting out alive, right? The still expression that came over his leader's face didn't inspire a lot of confidence in him. Granin. He asked. I'm not sure he's going to have what it takes to go all the way, he said reluctantly. I know there's a few projects that the cult has squirreled away for a long time. If they've been brought here and dragged into this mess, then it would be hard to see the ant making it through alive. Let's hope he doesn't get put against such a monster in the first round then. Torina observed quietly. The three of them fell into a grim silence as they each contemplated the fate of their charge in the upcoming battles. All around them the shapers of the cult engaged in polite small talk, animated discussion and quiet strategizing about their own prospects in the tournament. Observations, tips and pointers were exchanged as the Golgari mages tried to predict the outcomes of theoretical matchups. And considered the finer points of monster archetypes. The atrium was the perfect space for this kind of thing. A wide chamber with soft and comfortable furniture for reclining in, sconces and columns around which small groups would naturally form. Anytime the shapers would hold some form of gathering, it would inevitably be in a space such as this. Granin hated them, much as he hated all of the formal settings he was forced to endure. He would rather be in the field. Out there he was able to make his own decisions and didn't have to put up with others' idiocy. A short time later there came a single, loud chime that resounded through the space with unnatural clarity, cutting through all conversation and silencing any words yet to escape from lips. The note hung in the air pure and clean as the chatter ceased, as if cut by a knife, and all in attendance turned toward the center of the space where the leading triad had assembled to address the gathering. Chapter 357 Opening Night. Somewhat cynically, Granin noted that it was Biratite Chrysalis, the fresh-faced youngster who stepped forward to address the gathered shapers. Presenting the face of change, the new way, as full of promise and youthful vigor. An innocent face atop the monster beneath. Granin couldn't help but curse in his mind. Stuck here in the outpost, he didn't have any opportunity to contact his own allies in the cult. The broader picture hovered beyond his grasp. It was possible that the insane bloodsport that was about to take place here was being replicated across cult strongholds all over the Golgari Empire. How many promising monsters, reared with care over years, the culmination of all the research and effort of their forebears, would be destroyed in the pursuit of this short-sightedness. Welcome all. It's wonderful to see so many members of the cult of the worm able to meet in such open congress. This is certainly the first time I've been able to witness such a gathering, but I'm certain there will be many more in the near future. Warm applause greeted these words as Chrysalis managed to look both abashed and pleased at the approbation of her fellows. Behind her, the two older members of her triad looked on with approval. As happy as I am, as we all are, to witness the strides the cult of the worm has taken over the last decade, we must be sure that we don't rest on our laurels. The leadership has determined that a sense of urgency must infuse our work going forward. Our purpose has remained the same over the duration of our existence. To reach that end, we have accumulated knowledge, experience, and resources through rigorous experimentation and practical application of our craft. But now comes the time when we must put these things to use. The pressure is building upon us, and we need to apply that pressure to our charges. In the heat of the crucible, we hope to create a perfect being. Perfect as Yerim is perfect. A monster of indomitable strength, unyielding will, and inevitable victory. It is our hope that through the coming contest the final ancient will be born. More applause, rapturous this time. Many voices called out to Yerim, called on him to watch over their efforts as they struggled to fulfill his command and break the chains of this world. Amidst it all, Granin and his fellow triad members were a point of stillness amidst the activity. They showed no joy or acclaim, or indeed, any response at all. Ever watchful, Eret Plamen, first in the leading triad in the outpost, took notice of this lack of enthusiasm but quickly dismissed it. The ant would be crushed underfoot soon enough, there was no need to be concerned with Lazus and his ilk. Chrysalis raised one hand and quiet gradually descended on the gathering. Each triad here represents one monster in the coming trial, one hope of the cult. I urge that each and every one of you give your all to ensure that your charge puts forward all of their strength. Only through your combined efforts will we be able to crown the most deserving candidate. We have gathered together worthy specimens from cult strongholds across a 500-kilometer stretch of the empire. An effort that has proven once again the growing might and influence of our cause. Each of these specimens represent the hope and distilled wisdom of our elders, and I for one can't wait to see which will be the most worthy. Shouts and cheers rose from the gathered shapers as they called out the names of their own charges, each wanting to demonstrate their conviction that it would be their own monster who would reign supreme. Granin had doubts. If his hunch was correct, the leading triad already had a favorite picked out. The contest was an excuse to feed as much experience and biomass to their chosen monster as possible. The pairings for the first round have been drawn. To ensure objectivity, My triad and I have randomized the process to the best of our ability. If you have any concerns with the draw, please don't hesitate to speak with Oradine Gravis. The old Golgari glared hard at the surrounding shapers as if daring them to bring a complaint before him. Granin doubted anyone would take them up on the offer. Not delaying any longer, Chrysalis turned and summoned a block of stone from the floor using earth magic. With another wave, letters began to appear on the stone, revealing the pairings for all to see. There was immediately jostling for position as the eager shapers pushed past each other to get a better glimpse, as if that they could seize some sort of advantage by finding the name of their opponent a few seconds ahead of the enemy. Although Corin bounced on his heels a bit, their triad waited patiently for the frenzy to die down before they began to push their way forward. When he finally reached the stone, Granin ran his eyes over it dispassionately until he found the name he was looking for. Seeing the opponent, his eyes flickered, then he turned back to his two allies. Let's go. We've got work to do. The two of them nodded, and as a unit they walked away from the excited murmurings of the gathering behind them. They had to trade a few favors to get the information they wanted, but in the end it was easier than Granin had thought it would be. If there was one thing that shapers were eager to blabber about, it was powerful monsters. What do you think, boss? Corin asked, concern written all over his face. In contrast, Torina looked much more composed. Granin eyed her appreciatively. It seemed as if she had already reached the same conclusions that he had, but with access to less information. She really was a hidden gem. He'd lucked out when the other triads had refused to take her. She was the most promising young Golgari he'd seen for a long time. They've mucked up, Granin stated confidently. They wanted to crush Anthony early and use him as food for one of their pet favorites. I expected as much from the beginning. Heartless cretins. Despite the fact he's a reincarnator, they just don't believe that the ant archetype has any hope of becoming individually strong. He couldn't help but shrug a little sheepishly. I have to say, I agreed with them until very recently. Common wisdom in the cult has dismissed ants as a dead end without promise. I think we know that's not true anymore, Torina stated. Don't get ahead of yourselves, Granin warned. Our current charge is far stronger than I would have expected an ant to get, but he's far from achieving the sort of level he needs. We just got lucky in the first round. Corin was still confused. I don't get it. It'd be nice if someone clued me in. Granin slapped him on the back. In their hubris, they've played straight into our greatest strength, putting the heaviest, slowest beast they have up against the ant. All power, no brain. He huffed with displeasure. No elegance at all. Isn't that a bad thing? Big and strong. It sounds like Anthony is going to get crushed like a bug. Not to worry. I think we'll get to see some interesting faces tomorrow. Granin chuckled evilly. I can hardly wait. Chapter 358 The First Fight. The combat grounds had been used by the Cult of the Worm to conduct field tests and training for prospective candidates for many years. It was a wide, circular field of loose sand and obstructing stones that had been created for this purpose. It wasn't easy to operate this kind of facility under the nose of the Shaper's Circle, which is why the cult strictly practiced these sorts of activities in out-of-the-way outposts, away from the cities and the prying eyes of those who would obstruct them. This was, however, the first time the combat grounds would be used for such a brutal and bloody competition as this. Oradine Gravis shifted in his seat as the murmur and hum of his fellow cult members around him increased in pitch and intensity. Tonight, the first few battles of the contest would take place, and there were several bouts that he was looking forward to, in particular the first. Customarily, the viewing area would be a place of silent reflection and learning as diligent cult members helped to train their candidates through live battle. On this particular night, things were a little more energetic. Even though he was happy to acknowledge the influx of energy and enthusiasm into the cult over the last decade, Gravis could admit to himself that he wasn't fully comfortable with the rapid pace of change taking place. But he would endure it, gladly. Creating and guiding the 20th Ancient was a sacred task, bestowed upon them by the Eternal Worm itself, a being so much greater than the entire Golgari Empire put together. When the circle was complete and their shackles were broken, they would experience true freedom. For this, any sacrifice was worth it. A rattling sound reached his ears and he turned his head toward the main gates, sitting forward in anticipation. This promised to be an interesting spectacle. On the far end of the combat grounds, the gate inched upwards until it locked into position with a resounding crash. From the shadowed recesses of the tunnel, a large monster emerged tentatively. The ant had arrived. Immediately the tone of the watching shapers became derisive and critical. Gravis didn't even need to hear what they were saying to understand the sentiments that they expressed. Although the ant-type monster was amongst the most feared and despised of all the different archetypes, nobody had high hopes for this creature. It was almost ironic. Ants had caused untold amounts of devastation throughout the dungeon over the centuries, wiping out cities, annihilating ecosystems and cleansing vast swaths of territory in breathtakingly short spans of time. The discovery of a nest was enough to put most of the dungeon's civilized powers on a war footing until complete extermination had been achieved. Yet Gravis couldn't muster any fear of this creature. A lone ant was only fearsome because it signified the presence of a horde of similar creatures nearby. No dungeon inhabitant throughout all of Pangera would lose to a single ant. Baseline stats were too low, offensive potential was weak, defensive prowess was still below average, well below average for an invertebrate. They came from such a low base and potential evolutions just had such little promise. It was just this creature's poor luck to be reborn as such a weak monster. To his knowledge, this was the first and only reincarnator to be born into an ant monster, at least that had come to the attention of the cult. In many ways, it was quite a waste. This Anthony character had an interesting attitude. If circumstances had been different, there was a chance that cooperation between them would have been fruitful. Alas, the unfortunate nature of his rebirth made it impossible. Reincarnated monsters were something of a special interest for the cult, as they often provided the greatest insights. A cooperative monster like Sarah was a gold mine of information and research. What was so pitiful about Anthony's case was that there was simply no interest within the cult to investigate the possibilities of an individual ant. Gravis almost started when someone suddenly sat down heavily beside him, interrupting his musings as he looked down on the unnaturally still insect brooding in the grounds. He was quite irritated to realize it was RinoZ. Don't you have somewhere to be? Like supporting your candidate alongside your triad? Gravis groused. Granin responded with a wry chuckle. I don't think too much fussing is going to be necessary for this one, Gravis. Do you? Oridine Gravis grunted in response. At least Lazus wasn't a complete fool, despite what his record might suggest. He'd probably seen the writing on the wall the moment the pairings had been released and not bothered wasting any time on the creature. I'm glad to see you've held on to a little of your intellect. Gravis harumphed. Oh, stow it, you cantankerous goat, Granin replied, always convinced you're on the right side of everything, aren't you? Not much has changed. If I didn't want to see your face at the end of this, I wouldn't have bothered sitting up here. Having said his piece, Granin folded both arms across his chest and stared down into the pit with rapt attention as the opposing gate began to rattle open. Somewhat taken aback by his fellow shaper's words, Gravis took a few seconds to process what he'd heard. Did Granin actually think that the ant could win? Had he gone completely soft in the head? Too much time out in the field might have weakened his judgment perhaps. With a contemptuous snort, the older of the two shapers turned his attention back to the field. He'd ignore this fool's jibes for now, plenty of time to make him eat his words when his charge had been flattened and eaten. With a resounding crash, the second gate slammed into position and from the shadows a massive creature shuffled forward. When it was fully revealed there were gasps and a wave of excited chattering arose from the spectating cult members. A huge, bulky frame supported on 8 thick, powerful legs, the RinoZ was an imposing sight. A large, brutish head that sported 3 gleaming horns emerged into the light, thick bone plating pushing through the leathery skin provided even more defense atop the rock-hard skin that covered the creature. It was a slow-moving boulder of a monster, at least 4 times the weight of the ant that faced it from across the field. The moment it laid its eyes on its opponent, the hulking brute huffed out a blast of air, lowered its horn and charged. The ground rumbled beneath the beast's feet, even the seat beneath Gravis vibrated with each step, causing an appreciative gleam to light up in his eye. Trying to contain the smug feeling that arose in his heart, he glanced toward the shaper sitting next to him. To his surprise, Granin didn't look in the least bit worried. In fact, he looked more calm than before. It's even slower than I thought it would be, Granin observed. This thing is so slow moving, no way you could trust it to hit a deadline. Chapter 359 Getting Bogged Down. Gravis wanted to retort at the idiocy being spilled from the seat next to him, but things developed quickly in the combat grounds. The charge of the RinoZ rapidly gained momentum and speed, smashing through the boulders in its way as if they were made of paper. He leaned back with satisfaction at the sight and couldn't help musing out loud. An experiment from our brothers and sisters in the north of the Empire. This creature represents the distilled wisdom of the cult in the fields of strength and toughness. Not many will be able to resist its devastating charge. A cold snort was his only reply as Granin continued to keep his eyes glued to the battle. The ant attempted to retaliate, firing a rapid series of dark purple bolts at the oncoming threat, as well as raising its rearmost segment to unleash several blasts of acid. Reincarnators often presented with interesting and unusual builds, and Gravis was interested to see what the ant was capable of, but even he was disappointed at the total lack of effect from the strikes. The purple bolt spells struck their target with ease, the RinoZ being as large as it was, but as far as he could see there was no visible effect. Some kind of curse perhaps. The acid was even more ineffectual, sizzling and bubbling away, it wasn't able to penetrate the thick hide of the charging rhino. What was that magic? Not being able to identify a particular spell at first glance wasn't unusual, but the complete and utter lack of visual effect was baffling. What was the ant hoping to achieve? When the RinoZ had reached halfway across the field, the ant still showed no sign of moving from its position. Blast after blast of the purple bolt flew out along with more acid strikes. The target for the acid appeared to have shifted as it began to land lower on the body, striking the legs and shoulders of the beast, but there was still little effect. Undeterred, the powerful rhino monster built more speed the further it charged. This was one of the key mutations that had been built into this creature's build. An impressive innovation by the shapers to say the least. The more the beast charged, the faster it would be able to go, turning itself into an unstoppable hammer of mass and power. Though it appeared to be slow and overburdened by its excessive mass, the opposite was actually true. By standing still, the ant had played directly into the strengths of the opponent. If he'd had the wit to move closer to his larger opponent and attempt to circle, it would have been harder for the beast to build up sufficient speed to achieve an unavoidable charge. By standing in one place, the RinoZ was absolved of needing to turn and bleeding momentum. It appeared that this battle was all but over. I hope you guys thought to reinforce the wall before you allowed that thing to come out, Granin observed idly. Gravis' eyes narrowed. He wasn't sure if that work had been done actually. This could be bad. You aren't worried that your charge is going to get splatted all over the wall? Gravis sneered. No. I'm worried that several of my fellow cult members are going to experience serious injuries. It seemed as if the cult members felt the same way. Those who were in line with the unstoppable beast charging in their direction were beginning to scramble out of the way and make a run for safer seats. They didn't have long to execute the move. For the final stretch of distance, the RinoZ finally utilized the dash skill and transformed itself into a blurry streak that shot forward as if it were launched using air magic. At the same time it lowered its horn and stabbed forward, sending a wide blast of light streaking toward the hapless-looking ant. Boom! The massive rhino slammed into the wall like a gigantic, speeding boulder, causing the entire outpost to shake. The shapers in the viewing areas not sitting down were bowled over, and even those sitting were rocked back and forth, having to take a moment to recollect their balance. Dust and debris of what was left of the wall trailed through the air before slamming into the ground. Many onlookers were forced to employ their own magical arts to deflect the projectiles. Fortunately, it appeared nobody was hurt. It would appear that sufficient power and a well-crafted build are more than enough to overcome an insect with enhanced mental stats. Hardly a surprise. The leading shaper sneered. Granin shook his head. This is the problem with you people. So sure of what you think you know, you can't change your minds when reality is smacking you in the face. What are you talking about? Are we even watching the same contest? Apparently not. Look down there, moron. One granite-covered arm rose to point and Gravis turned his head almost despite himself. The dust had begun to clear and the scene that was revealed was comical. The RinoZ had executed its charge splendidly, achieving an almost irresistible amount of force at the apex of its charge, certainly for creatures of the same tier. Anything struck by that blow would be annihilated. Yet that impressive attack had left it lodged firmly in the reinforced stone wall. Only the back half of its body remained visible, the rear four legs scrabbling at the loose sand of the combat grounds to try extricate itself from its predicament. Where the ant had stood was now revealed to be a hole in the ground from which two antennae had begun to emerge. The two sensory organs twitched this way and that before the mandibles and head of the ant cleared the top of the tunnel, followed by the rest of the creature. Seeing its opponent wedged into the debris, even the ant appeared to be stunned for a moment before it happily began to renew its barrage of purple bolt spells, once again to no apparent effect. One-dimensional monsters are wonderful thought experiments. Derision and contempt dripped from Granin's voice as he delighted in the sight of his candidate tormenting his opponent. Achieving theoretical maximums of force and toughness, it's great fun. Everyone loves to see the big numbers. But they are never and have never been viable monsters outside of a vacuum. I almost spat out my drink when I heard a triad had spent 4 years grooming this RinoZ. A colossal waste of time and effort. Being too rigid is a tremendous weakness, the cult has been aware of that for almost 1,000 years. The criticism stung Gravis, just as much as his expected winner's feeble attempts to extricate itself. He had to retort. It's not over yet. The RinoZ has the strongest defense of all the candidates in this experiment. An ant has only a feeble offensive base. Despite the fact that it's buried in the wall, the rhino has yet to take any damage at all. It's too soon to declare yourself the winner. Granin just shook his head as he watched Anthony cast gravity bolt after gravity bolt into his hapless opponent. Considering the starting mass of that fat rhino, after being hit with 20 condensed gravity bolts, how heavy had it become? Chapter 360 Tears of Magic, Delicious Meals. Anthony had been prepared to share a few things with Granin, even though he'd remained guarded throughout their conversation. The revelation of gravity magic had been the most startling to him, something that had surprised Anthony quite a bit. When Granin had pressed him, he'd been happy to admit that this was a force that was quite commonly understood in his own world. It was quite odd that in the cult of the worm's long history of cultivating relationships with reincarnators, records of this branch of magic hadn't become widely known. The ant had theorized that because deeper understanding of just how important and powerful gravity could be was relatively recent on his past world, and that the time relationship between the two places was quite wibbly-wobbly, it's possible that most of the individuals they'd interacted with in the past simply hadn't known about it. Regardless, the conversation had developed and Anthony complained that he was yet to gain access to the gravity magic affinity skill, which had given Granin an opportunity to share his knowledge. Magic, he'd explained, was divided into distinct tiers. Gaining access to the next tier required either a certain master of the previous one, or a powerful affinity with a particular type of mana. A monster who chose many death-related mutations would be far more likely to gain access to that particular type of mana earlier, even if they didn't have a death mana gland. In terms of what magic fell into which tiers, that was sometimes a little fuzzy. The first and most accessible were the base elements: water, earth, fire and air. Almost everyone was required to start with one of more of these. Some shapers chose to spend a significant amount of time mastering 2, 3 or even all 4 of these base elements, whereas others tried to level up just one of them as quickly as they could in order to move on to more powerful forms of magic. There were positives and negatives to both schools of thought, but Granin tended to think that having a strong foundation in the elements was useful, especially in the field. The spells were easier, the mana more forgiving to work with. When you were exhausted, stressed and mentally drained, it was far easier to draw on air or fire mana than it was to try and manipulate something like lightning, shadow or poison. From those base 4 elements, there were lots of places to go. At certain levels of mastery, the base elements could be fused to create more powerful varieties, or ranked up to give access to specialized or powerful forms. Water could ranked up to unlock ice, fire could be ranked up to unlock blue flame. Earth and fire could be fused at rank 3 mastery to form lava mana affinity. Similarly, ice and water could unlock fog mana affinity. Or those options could be discarded and the practitioner could perhaps unlock the rare elements: lightning, wood, metal and decay. Above that, the more abstract powers began to appear: healing, mind, life, death, doom, fate, space, heart, poison and many others. There was a great deal of disagreement about exactly which affinity belonged in which tier, because each individual was given different options by the system depending on a myriad of factors that nobody had been able to accurately map. Anthony himself was a perfect example, skipping ahead to mind and healing mana without having to progress through the rare elements. Granin had surmised that this was due to his gravity mana gland and regular use of that mana type, combined with his generally weak base element skills, causing the system to shunt him higher up. Exactly where gravity mana fell into the tier ratings, Granin couldn't be certain. From what he'd been able to understand from the ant's somewhat rambling explanations, it was probably on par with space, or even above it. Granin had cautioned him not to be too flagrant with the more powerful aspects of this mana type. If he were to pull off something too crazy, then he'd be set upon by the cult, who would be desperate to unlock the secrets of this new magic. At that point, he would never have any semblance of freedom. Still, judging by the reaction around him, quite a few were growing curious about this strange purple mana that the giant ant seemed to be happily pelting at his opponent. The more the RinoZ was hit, the slower and more lethargic it became. Its originally vigorous and powerful movements had become increasingly sluggish and pained, as if the creature had the weight of a mountain on its back. Which it did, in some ways. What is going on? Gravis couldn't help but ask out loud. Such a physically powerful monster was acting as if it had been drained of all its strength, no longer able to even support its own body. Had the ant drained its physical stats in some way? Or inflicted some sort of strength-reducing curse? Such a thing usually didn't stack well, each successive cast achieving less than the last. It wasn't capable of achieving this sort of effect. He ground his teeth in irritation. The more lopsided the battle below became, the more satisfaction radiated from the seat beside him. The blasted fool Granin wasn't even bothering to hide it, openly grinning and even chuckling to himself as his charge fired spell after spell into the now faltering backside of its opponent. Such a powerful beast, Granin happily mocked, so strong. Look, it can almost stand up under its own weight. Oh, no, never mind, it collapsed back onto the ground. For a moment there I thought the finest minds in the cult had wrought a true masterpiece. The next ancient was right before my eyes. It's not over yet, Gravis snapped. Whatever curses that damned ant has applied will wear off eventually. I don't believe it has a way to break through the Rhinocergodron's defense. Granin couldn't believe what he was hearing. Still not giving up. The damned fatty can't even stand. Don't be more stubborn than the stone on your skin, Gravis. Indeed, even the ant seemed to think that things were getting pathetic. Before the boggled eyes of the watching shapers, the ant ceased firing its spells and climbed directly up onto the back of the struggling rhino monster. Goodness knows what the team who designed and reared this creature thought, watching a pathetic ant of all things literally walking over their masterpiece and standing on top of it. What occurred next was even more jarring. The ant turned this way and that, its antennae tipping and tapping rapidly as it clearly tried to find a gap in the tough bone plating that covered the rhino. When it was unable to find one, the ant almost seemed to slump with weariness before it reared back and bared its mandibles. Chomp. The bite was far more powerful than those observing had expected. The dark energy that manifested bit down hard on the plating, sending chips flying into the air. One bite wasn't nearly enough though, and the ant continued to chomp as the creature struggled weakly beneath it. Chomp, 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 chomp. The gallery was then treated to the sight of an ant flopping down on its own opponent's back to rest and recover its stamina for a full 5 minutes. At this point Granin was sure he heard the sound of the rhino's triad passing out from pure rage. Chomp, 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 ellipsis, chomp. We have a victor. The Rhinocergodron has fallen to the ant. Granin frowned. Even the adjudicator was being so unprofessional. Standards in the cult had fallen badly. Sitting next to him, Gravis ground his teeth audibly as muttered conversations broke out amongst the stands. Oblivious to it all, Anthony had once again slumped down to rest. After a minute or two he shook of the lethargy and watched by the apoplectic gaze of the shapers who had sacrificed years to rear the perfect rhino, he began to eat.